What if the only difference between someone making $50,000 a year and someone making 500,000 isn't talent? Like it's not luck or even a willingness to just work brutal hours, but this, invisible income thermostat that's hidden deep inside their own mind.
I mean, it completely challenges everything we are taught, right? We're so conditioned to believe in this strict, linear relationship between input and output.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we just assume that to make 10 times the money, you have to be 10 times smarter or work 10 times as many hours.
Mhm.
But when you look at the actual psychology of high performance, that math just totally falls apart.
It really does. And that tension right there, that's exactly what we are tackling in today's deep dive. We are looking into the introduction and the first chapter of Brian Tracy's book, The Psychology of Selling.
Which is such a foundational text.
Oh, absolutely. So we're going to map out the mental blueprint behind high performance. If you're listening and you're in business or you're an entrepreneur or honestly just trying to break through an invisible ceiling in your career, this is for you.
Right, because wealth is created on the inside before it ever shows up on the outside.
Exactly. So let's establish right up front what this material is not. Because I think people hear sales psychology and they think manipulation.
Yeah, they think of NLP dark arts or slick closing tricks to force people into buying things.
Right.
But this is entirely about the inner game. If your internal psychology is off, all those external tactics are just going to feel like, I don't know, pushing a boulder up a muddy hill.
A very steep, muddy hill. So let's ground this in the real world with Tracy's actual origin story, because it's wild. He was not this, born salesman with a silver spoon.
Not at all. He didn't even finish high school.
Right. His early 20s were just grueling manual labor,
Yeah.
washing dishes, working in sawmills. He literally slept in his car at one point and worked on a Norwegian freighter just to eat.
Which really explains his whole entry into sales. It wasn't a calling for him. It was just desperation. He couldn't find physical labor anymore.
Yeah, he says it was like backing a car up in the pitch black, hitting something and getting out to see what it was.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And his first sales job gave him zero actual training. It was basically, here are your cards, here are the brochures, there's the door.
So brutal. I think anyone who has ever started a tough new job knows that feeling of just being thrown to the wolves.
Totally.
So his only framework for success was physical labor, right? So he adopts the mud against the wall method.
Just sheer brute force.
Exactly. Knock on enough doors, talk to enough people, and eventually, statistically, someone will buy. He was waiting in parking lots at 7 a.m.
Ambushing people as they got to work.
Yeah. And then he'd do commercial doors all day and residential doors until 9 or 10 at night.
But here's the crazy part. Even with all that effort, he was barely surviving. And the veterans in his office gave him terrible advice.
Oh, right, the rejection game thing.
Yeah, they told him to collect no's as fast as possible to get to a yes, so he just started talking louder and faster, trying to essentially batter people into submission.
Which, and this is so relevant for anyone listening today, the mud against the wall method is still everywhere.
Oh, completely.
It's the entrepreneur sending out like 10,000 spam emails a day, or a creator posting mindless content for 15 hours a day and burning out.
Thinking that suffering equals effectiveness.
Exactly. But for Tracy, it wasn't working. He's living in this tiny guest house room, outworking everybody and failing. So after 6 months of this, he does something really vulnerable.
He asks the top guy in the office what he's doing differently.
Yes. And that question changes everything, because it reveals the law of cause and effect.
Right, the idea that success is not an accident. It's a predictable process. Like, success leaves tracks.
Success leaves tracks. I love that. So he starts watching this top performer, who is barely older than him, but making 5 to 10 times the money.
And the guy is barely working. From the outside, at least. He rolls in at 9, has a relaxed chat with the prospect, gets a check, takes a long lunch.
It just looks so effortless. But it wasn't magic, right?
No, not at all. This top guy had been trained for 16 months by a Fortune 500 company. He had a highly structured, logical presentation.
Which Tracy didn't even know existed. He thought a presentation was just talking really fast until the prospect gave up.
Right, but the top guy wasn't pitching. He was diagnosing.
Unpack that a bit, because that's a huge shift.
So instead of a speech, he used a sequence of logical questions. He moved from general to specific, mapping out the prospect's actual pain points.
The Socratic method, basically.
Making the prospect realize on their own that they needed the solution. By the end, there was no hard close. It was just the natural next step. He treated them like a patient.
Whereas Tracy was treating them like targets.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I have an analogy for this because it's just so crucial. Imagine you have to chop down this massive oak tree, right? And someone hands you a baseball bat.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you're sweating, your hands are bleeding, you're working 15 hours a day, and you're making zero progress.
Because you have the wrong tool.
Exactly. But your brain says, swing harder, hustle more. But then someone hands you a chainsaw. Suddenly the effort plummets, but the results just skyrocket.
The effort in the baseball bat scenario is real. It's just completely misaligned.
Right. You don't need more effort. You need the right mechanism.
And once Tracy picked up the chainsaw, the diagnostic questions, his sales exploded. He realized he didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
Just find the tracks of the best performers and copy them.
But wait, here's the thing. We live in an era where everyone has access to the chainsaws, right?
We really do. Podcasts, courses, books.
So why is almost everyone still swinging baseball bats?
That brings us to the treadmill analogy from the book, which is brilliant. Think about the most popular piece of home exercise equipment.
The treadmill, obviously.
Right. People spend over $1 billion a year on treadmills, but buying one doesn't make you fit.
It just becomes a really expensive clothes hanger.
Exactly. You get the dopamine hit of buying it, but you don't actually do the run. Now, medically speaking, we know treadmills work. The science is settled.
Right. Your cardio will improve if you actually use it.
And these sales frameworks are the exact same way. The techniques of the highest earners are proven. But knowing about the chainsaw doesn't cut down the tree.
You have to step onto the machine, turn it on, and do the uncomfortable work.
Yes. And if you do, you start seeing the reality of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Oh, this blew my mind when I first really understood it.
It's ruthless, honestly. The top 20% of salespeople make 80% of the money. And the bottom 80% are left fighting over the remaining 20%.
But it gets even crazier because it's fractal, right?
It is. If you take that top 20% and apply the rule again, the top 20% of that group, so the top 4% overall, earn 80% of the wealth within that elite tier.
That is just nuts. 4 or 5 people out of 100 making as much as the other 95 combined.
It breaks people's brains because we assume those top performers must be working 50 times harder.
Or they have an IQ of like 200.
Right. But they only have 24 hours in a day, just like us.
So how does that massive gap happen?
It's what the text calls the winning edge concept. It basically says that small marginal differences in ability lead to massive differences in results.
Like the horse racing analogy.
Exactly. Explain that one.
So picture a high-stakes horse race. The horse that wins by just a nose might get $1 million.
Right?
And the horse that comes in second gets maybe 50,000. The winning horse gets 20 times the money, but is it 20 times faster?
Not at all. It's barely a fraction of a percent faster.
Literally just a nose.
Yeah.
But that tiny fractional advantage creates a 2,000% difference in reward.
And business is exactly like that. It's winner take all. There are no consolation prizes for coming in second on a big deal.
You don't get 20% of the commission for being a really great runner-up.
Nope, you get 0.
Which sounds stressful, but it's actually kind of a relief, isn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, you don't have to be superhuman. You don't have to be twice as smart to double your income. You just need to be like 3 or 4% better in a few key areas.
Exactly. The text breaks this down into 7 key result areas, or KRAs. Prospecting, building rapport, identifying needs, presenting, answering objections, closing, and getting referrals.
So it's like a combination lock.
Yes. You have to align all the digits. If you're amazing at presenting but you can't prospect, the vault stays locked.
Let's visualize that 3% improvement. Take answering objections. A mediocre rep hears your price is too high, and they panic.
They get defensive, or they just immediately offer a huge discount.
Right. But a top performer, someone just 3% better, hears that same objection and just pauses. They smile and ask a diagnostic question.
Aside from price, is there anything else holding us back?
Exactly. That tiny shift in emotional regulation saves the deal. And if you compound that over a decade, you have a totally different life.
It's the magic of compound interest applied to human skill. Better rapport leads to better needs identification, which makes the presentation stronger, which means fewer objections.
So it just cascades.
And suddenly you're the one winning by a nose every single time.
Okay, but we have to talk about the inner game, because if it was just about learning a few scripts, everyone would be a millionaire.
Right. You can hand someone the perfect script, and they will still find a way to fail.
Because their internal governor is actively sabotaging them.
Yes. Harvard did a massive study of 16,000 salespeople, and they found success wasn't about education or background. It was almost entirely mental.
The self-concept.
The self-concept. It's the master operating system. Your brain is a supercomputer, and the self-concept is the programming.
The internalized narratives you believe about yourself.
Exactly. And the rule is, you can never perform on the outside in a way that contradicts your self-concept on the inside.
Let's talk about the income thermostat, because this completely changed how I view human behavior.
It's fascinating, right?
It really is. The theory is that everyone has an invisible thermostat in their subconscious. And you basically never earn 10% more or 10% less than what that thermostat is set to.
It regulates your reality, just like a real thermostat regulates a room. If you set a room to 70 degrees and it gets too cold, the furnace kicks on.
And if it gets too hot, the AC kicks on to cool it back down to baseline.
Exactly. Your brain does this with your wallet.
So let's look at a real-world scenario. Say a salesperson's thermostat is set to $50,000 a year. That's what they subconsciously think they are worth.
Right.
But they hit a hot streak, the market is booming, and by September, they've already hit their 50 grand. Rationally, they should double down and make 100, right?
But that's when the psychological AC kicks in. Their pipeline mysteriously dries up.
But it's not the market, it's them.
Exactly, it's their behavior. Earning that much creates cognitive dissonance. It feels unsafe to their subconscious. So they start doing what psychologists call compensating behaviors.
Like self-sabotage, but disguised as logical excuses.
Yeah, they suddenly feel burned out. They spend days organizing their CRM instead of calling clients. They pick fights with their boss.
They just coast until December 31st, and then on January 1st, when the quota resets to 0, they burst out of the gate again.
Because the room got too hot, so the brain shut the furnace off. And they have no idea they're doing it to themselves.
And it works the other way, too. If they have a terrible start to the year and they're tracking way below their 50 grand, the furnace kicks on.
They go into scrambling behaviors, they panic, work weekends, hustle like crazy until they claw back into their comfort zone.
And the second they hit that 50 grand plus line, they relax again. It's a psychological cage.
There's an incredible story in the text about this. A young guy from a very poor farming community gets a job selling high-end satellite dishes to farmers.
Oh man, this story is wild.
It really is. He starts the job right after a great harvest. The farmers have tons of cash, and they're just buying these $5,000 dishes left and right.
So suddenly this kid is making cash commissions that are more than his parents made in a year.
But his thermostat was set to poverty. The sheer volume of wealth didn't make him happy. It traumatized him.
His brain processed the money as a literal threat to his identity.
Yeah, he would make massive sales, and then the stress would overwhelm him. He'd go back to his apartment, pull down the shades, and literally hide under the covers in the dark.
Just paralyzed by anxiety. His nervous system short-circuited because his reality didn't match his self-concept.
The brain prioritizes the familiar over the optimal. It would rather you be comfortably poor than uncomfortably rich.
Which explains why lottery winners go bankrupt so often. Their bank account jumps to 50 million degrees, but their thermostat is still at 50,000.
So their subconscious forces them to make terrible investments until they are back to baseline.
Okay, so if someone listening realizes their thermostat is stubbornly stuck at, say, $80,000, how do they physically fix it? How do you rewire that machine without short-circuiting?
You have to achieve the goals in your mind before you achieve them in reality. You have to intentionally expand your comfort zone using high-fidelity visualization.
Like visualizing the exact version of yourself that naturally earns that higher amount.
Yes. How that person walks, talks, handles stress. You preload the software update into your subconscious.
But there's a huge caveat here. You can't just jump from 50 degrees to 500 degrees overnight.
No, your brain's bullshit detector will go off. Tracy actually shares a mistake he made with this.
Oh yeah, when he was making 30 grand.
Right, he was making 30,000 and he decided to set a goal for 300,000.
And what happened?
He just felt totally lethargic. His subconscious looked at the gap between his skills and that number and just rejected it as a fantasy.
It demotivated him. It's like telling a beginner they have to run an ultramarathon tomorrow.
The brain just shuts down. So he dialed it back to 50,000. A number that was a stretch, but believable.
And his reticular activating system accepted it, looked for opportunities, and he hit it. You have to stretch the rubber band, not snap it.
Precisely. Move from 50 to 75, then 75 to 100.
So what's the fuel for this whole internal machine? The text says it's your self-esteem. which it defines super simply: how much you like yourself.
It sounds aggressively simple, doesn't it? But psychologically, it's profound. Your self-esteem determines your resilience and your performance.
If you genuinely like yourself, you bounce back faster.
Yeah.
And you genuinely like other people more.
Which triggers the friendship factor.
Yeah.
Humans are intuitive.
Yeah.
We sense when someone likes us, and we naturally like them back.
And people buy from people they like.
Always.
But how do you actually build that self-esteem? Because the text talks about aggressively controlling your inner dialogue.
Yes, repeating the phrase, I like myself, over and over. 10, 20 times a day.
Honestly, to a lot of people, that sounds like toxic positivity, or that old Saturday Night Live sketch. Does chanting in your car actually rewire your insecurities?
It sounds cheesy, but look at the physiology. It's neuroplasticity. You're firing and wiring new neural pathways.
Right.
And when you forcefully override negative self-talk, your brain releases endorphins.
So you're creating an altered, chemically enhanced state.
Yes. The endorphins suppress cortisol. It creates genuine confidence. It lowers the pitch of your voice, dilates your pupils. You physically become more compelling.
Which totally explains why the absolute best time to make a sale is immediately after you just made a sale.
Oh, 100%.
The economy didn't change in 5 minutes, your product didn't change, but your odds of closing the next person just skyrocket.
Because your self-esteem just spiked, your brain is flooded with dopamine, you feel like a winner.
And emotions are contagious. The prospect catches that enthusiasm. You could sell more in 6 hours than you did in 3 weeks, just riding that biochemical wave.
So the practical takeaway is, you cannot afford a negative thought before a high-stakes meeting.
You have to artificially pump up your state, like an athlete doing jumping jacks. Because if you don't, you fall victim to the twin mental breaks.
The fear of failure and the fear of rejection.
Right. So across the table, the buyer is terrified of failing. They don't want to look foolish or get ripped off.
The text compares them to a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, just hypervigilant.
And sitting across from them is the seller, who is secretly paralyzed by the fear of rejection.
The deep terror of hearing the word no.
People underestimate how powerful that fear is. It literally dictates how we structure our days.
Just look at that Columbia University study. They tracked how much time salespeople actually spend interacting with prospects. Out of an 8-hour day, guess how much time it was?
90 minutes, an hour and a half.
90 minutes. They don't make their first call until 11, and they quit by 3:30.
So what are they doing for the other 6.5 hours?
Shuffling business cards, organizing the CRM, chatting about the weather, drinking coffee.
Elaborate make-work tasks. But why? Are they just lazy?
No, it's self-preservation. Evolutionarily, social rejection meant isolation from the tribe, which meant literal death.
Wow.
Our brains view rejection as a physical threat. The anterior cingulate cortex processes social rejection exactly like physical pain.
So the subconscious hits the emergency brake and makes you organize your desk for 2 hours to protect you from the pain of hearing no.
It's like driving a Ferrari with the emergency brake yanked up.
You're flooring it, burning fuel, totally exhausted, but moving at 2 miles an hour.
There's a brilliant thought experiment in the text about this. Imagine your manager gives you a list of 50 highly qualified prospects.
And guarantees that every single one will buy today. 0 chance of rejection. But the list expires in 24 hours.
What does your day look like then?
You wouldn't be chatting at the water cooler. You wouldn't take a 2-hour lunch. You'd sprint from prospect to prospect until midnight.
Exactly. You'd work until you collapsed. It proves people aren't lazy. Fear is the only issue.
So how do we dismantle that fear?
You have to realize that rejection is never personal. It's neutral data, like the weather.
You don't take a rainstorm as a personal insult.
Right, but we take a no as a devastating attack on our soul, when really they might just not have the budget or they had a fight with their spouse that morning.
It has 0 reflection on your value. And taking it personally destroys your volume. Because 80% of sales take 5 or more attempts.
Yet most people quit after the first no. Their amygdala flashes danger, and they retreat to their desk.
But the top 4% expect the no. They have a mental armor. That specific mantra from the text.
Some will, some won't, so what? Next.
I love that. Some will, some won't, so what? Next. It strips all the emotional baggage away.
It just acknowledges the law of averages. Who cares if someone says no? Move on.
Combine that stoked attachment with high self-esteem, and you are literally unstoppable.
You ride the up escalator to high performance.
So bringing this all together as we wrap up, we went from the mud against the wall to the chainsaw of diagnostic questions.
We talked about the treadmill and having to actually do the work.
The mathematical reality of the winning edge, just being a tiny fraction better.
And most importantly, the income thermostat and the absolute necessity of high self-esteem to override fear.
And the core insight of all of this is that success is fundamentally an inside-out job.
Yeah.
Your external wealth is just a mirror of your internal self-concept.
You can have the best scripts and work 14 hours a day, but until you reset that thermostat, you're fighting a war against your own subconscious.
It will sabotage you to protect its identity. Master the inner game, and the external world effortlessly follows.
Which leaves us with a really profound, maybe even chilling question to think about.
Let's hear it.
If your mind operates like a pre-programmed thermostat, aggressively preventing you from exceeding your limits, who originally programmed those settings?
Oh, wow.
Was it an offhand comment from your parents, a critical teacher, the zip code you grew up in? Are you unknowingly living out your finite career, constrained by limits someone else arbitrarily set for you decades ago?
That is heavy. Are you living inside someone else's limits? That is definitely something to chew on. And hey, now we know the machine exists and we know it can be hacked. Next time, we're going to explore exactly how to set those massive goals and shatter that internal ceiling once and for all. Until then, keep diving deep into your own mind and remember to look in the mirror before your next big moment and tell yourself, I like myself.
So what if the difference between making, say, $50,000 a year and $500,000 a year isn't about working 10 times harder? What if it's just about being a nose faster? Like a racehorse winning a photo finish.
Right, just that tiny, tiny fraction of a difference.
Exactly. I mean, what if the absolute biggest obstacle to doubling your income right now isn't the economy, it isn't your pricing, and it definitely isn't your competition? What if it's just an invisible thermostat hidden deep inside your own mind?
It completely flips the script on how we usually think about professional drive. I mean, in this deep dive, we're really dissecting the foundational concepts from Brian Tracy's The Psychology of Selling.
Yeah, specifically looking at the inner game and goal setting.
Right, exactly. The mission here is to understand why success in business is, well, it's almost entirely mental. We're going to look at the actual mechanisms of how you can hack your own self-concept to shatter your current income ceiling.
Which is huge.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we'll see why mastering your internal psychology is the ultimate undeniable shortcut to joining the top 20% of high earners in literally any entrepreneurial endeavor.
Look, if you are listening to this, you are probably already pretty familiar with the 80-20 rule. I mean, the Pareto principle is practically a cliche in business literature at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone knows it.
Right, like 20% of the salespeople make 80% of the money. We've all heard it. We all just kind of nod along.
Yeah.
But the source material takes this and applies a compounding effect to it that, well, it actually explains why income inequality in sales is just so vicious.
Yeah, it looks at the 80-20 of the 80-20.
Exactly.
And that compounding effect is where the numbers get truly staggering. Because when you isolate that top 20% of performers, people already making the lion's share of the revenue, and you apply the Pareto principle to them, you realize something crazy.
Which is?
That the top 4% are earning 80% of the money within that elite group.
Wait, really? The top 4%?
Yeah. So if you have a massive sales force of 100 people, 4 or 5 of them are making as much money as the other 95 combined.
That is just wild to think about.
It is. The people in that top 4% are earning, on average, 16 times the income of the people in the bottom 80%.
See, my immediate assumption when I hear a stat like 16 times the income, I assume those top 4% must have some massive unfair advantage.
Right, like they were born with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like they have Ivy League networks, or just unmatched magnetic charisma, or maybe they are just ruthlessly grinding out 120-hour work weeks while the rest of us are sleeping.
But the text aggressively pushes back on that idea. It argues that the fundamental mechanism separating the elite from the average is not vastly superior talent.
Right.
It's a concept called the winning edge.
And to be honest, when I first read that, I initially thought the winning edge just meant working like 3 or 4% longer hours than the next guy.
Which is a super common misconception, actually. But the winning edge principle is about skill execution. It's not about raw hours.
Oh, okay. So what is it exactly?
The principle states that small, consistent differences in ability lead to enormous differences in results. The gap between a mediocre performer and a top-tier earner isn't this giant chasm of natural talent.
So it's not like they're just biologically better salespeople.
Not at all. It is usually just a few small techniques executed consistently and well just over and over again.
Which brings us right to the horse race analogy. I love this part. Think about the actual mechanics of a horse race. The horse that wins by a nose in a photo finish takes home 10 times the prize money of the horse that comes in second.
10 times the money. For a nose.
Right. But let's look at the reality of that animal. Is the winning horse 10 times faster than the second place horse?
Obviously not.
No. Is it even 10% faster? Of course not. It is only a tiny fraction of a second faster. Yet, that microscopic, almost imperceptible difference in speed translates into a 1,000% difference in the financial reward.
And the brutal truth of the business world is that salespeople actually have a significant disadvantage compared to those resources.
Wait, how do you mean?
Well, in a horse race, second and third place still come in the money. There is a consolation prize.
Oh, true. You still get something.
Exactly. But a business transaction, especially in sales, is a strict winner-take-all environment. The person who loses the sale gets zero return on their invested time.
Wow, yeah. Even if they spent 3 months taking the client to dinners and building this flawless proposal.
Exactly. The person who wins the sale might only be a nose better. Maybe they paused for 2 extra seconds before answering an objection, or asked one slightly more probing question, but they walk away with 100% of the commission.
So if I lose a massive client to a competitor, it doesn't mean their software is 10 times better than mine, or their pitch was universally superior.
No, not at all.
It might just mean there was a tiny 3% difference in how they handled one specific concern the client had.
Right.
So I don't need to brain my entire playbook to the ground. I just need to polish very specific pages.
That's the perfect way to look at it. You only need to become 3 to 4% better in what the author identifies as the 7 key result areas of selling.
The KRAs?
Yes, the KRAs. Think of these like the digits in a combination lock. You have to dial all 7 in the correct sequence to open the vault.
Okay, lay them out for us. What are the 7?
They are prospecting, building rapport, identifying needs, presenting, answering objections, closing the sale, and finally getting resales and referrals.
Okay, let's make this concrete, because just listing 7 areas can feel a bit abstract. Let's take answering objections. What does a 0% improvement look like versus a 3% improvement?
That's a great example to dig into.
Because to me, the 0% approach is getting defensive. A prospect says your price is too high, and the amateur salesperson immediately fires back with a justification about features and quality.
Basically starting an argument.
Exactly. It's defensive. So what does the 3% edge look like in that moment?
The 3% edge is entirely about restraint and questioning. Instead of reacting defensively, the top performer pauses, smiles, and says, "I understand how you feel." Many of our best clients felt the exact same way when they first saw the pricing. But when they looked closer, here is what they found.
Ah, the classic feel, felt, found method.
Exactly. Or even simply asking, why do you say that? That subtle pivot just takes the pressure right out of the room. It requires 0 extra hours of work, 0 extra intelligence, but the outcome is geometrically better.
And the text outlines the author's own painful journey to realizing this. I mean, he didn't start out using polite, calculated questions.
You know, he definitely did not.
He started out using the mud against the wall method. He was handed a stack of brochures, told to go knock on doors, and rely entirely on the law of averages.
The idea being that if you just blindly throw enough mud against the wall, some of it has to stick.
Right, which sounds exhausting.
And when that brute force strategy failed him, he pivoted to an even more punishing strategy. He started playing the rejection game.
Oh man, the rejection game. This part was hard to read.
The flawed theory he was taught was that if you collect enough rejections, you will eventually stumble into a yes. So he literally ran from office to office trying to get rejected as fast as possible.
Literally running.
Literally running. Because he believed he had the gift of gab, anytime a prospect seemed hesitant, his mechanism was just to speak louder and faster. He was working grueling hours, starting at 7 a.m. and knocking on residential doors until 10 p.m.
And he was starving. He was trying to sprint a marathon without knowing the route.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
But then he finally stops and observes the top guy in his office. And this guy, he saunters in at 9 a.m., has a quiet, relaxed chat with the prospect, gets a check, goes to a 2-hour lunch with another prospect, makes another sale, and heads home early.
The contrast is just hilarious.
It is. He is making 10 times the money with a fraction of the visible effort. When the author finally asks the secret, he discovers this top performer was trained for 16 months by a Fortune 500 company.
Right, he had actual training.
Yes, he isn't relying on the gift of gab at all. He is using a structured, scientific process of asking logical questions, moving from the general to the specific, just to uncover a genuine need.
And that profound shift is moving from a mindset of telling to a mindset of diagnosing,
Diagnosing.
like a doctor.
Exactly like a doctor. Once the author adopted this method, asking questions, instead of overwhelming a prospect with an avalanche of product, features his sales absolutely skyrocketed.
Which makes total sense.
But, and this is where the source material takes a really fascinating psychological turn, none of this mechanical skill building matters if your internal machinery is programmed to reject success.
Ah, yes, the invisible ceiling. The text calls it the master program or your self-concept. And it boldly claims that the discovery of the self-concept was the most noteworthy breakthrough in human performance psychology in the 20th century.
It's a huge claim, but it really functions exactly like the operating system of a computer. Your self-concept is the bundled aggregation of every belief, fear, and assumption you hold about yourself. So it's basically how you define who you are.
Exactly. It dictates how you see yourself in every single area of your life. The inviolable rule of human behavior is that you cannot permanently perform on the outside in a manner that is inconsistent with your self-concept on the inside.
The analogy they use for this is brilliant. The income thermostat.
I love this analogy.
It's so good. Think about the physical thermostat on your living room wall. You set it to 70 degrees. If a cold front moves in and the room drops to 65, the heater kicks on to push it back to 70.
Right.
And if the sun comes out and it hits 75, the air conditioning kicks on to cool it back down. Well, your subconscious mind has the exact same regulatory mechanism for your bank account.
That's it, exactly. The psychological data shows that you can almost never earn 10% more or 10% less than your self-concept level of income.
Never more or less.
Right. If your internal psychological thermostat is rigidly set to $50,000 a year, your brain will continually orchestrate behaviors to ensure you stay exactly in that bracket.
Okay, let's look at the mechanism of how this actually happens. Say you have a phenomenal first quarter. You close a few massive deals, and by September, you have already hit your $50,000 target for the year.
Right, so you've hit your thermostat setting?
Yeah, and I see this happen all the time in sales environments. The person just completely takes their foot off the gas. But it's not just that they decide, hey, I'm going to take a vacation.
No, they don't do it consciously.
Exactly. The brain creates completely logical-sounding excuses to avoid selling. You suddenly decide you need to spend 3 solid days reorganizing your CRM database.
Oh yeah, organizing the desk, cleaning the inbox.
Yes. Or you pick a fight with your manager and use the bad mood as an excuse to go home early for a week. Or you convince yourself the market is softening in Q4, so why bother calling?
What you are describing is a protective mechanism. Unconsciously, the brain is sounding an alarm. Warning, we are out of our designated comfort zone. We are in uncharted territory. The sudden loss of motivation isn't laziness. It is compensating behavior. You will just spin your wheels with administrative tasks, and you won't authentically start selling again until January 1st, when the mental calendar resets to 0.
That is so wild. And conversely, if you receive a massive windfall, like a huge commission check, that blows your thermostat off the wall, you will feel a subconscious, irresistible urge to get rid of the money.
Yes, the self-sabotage kicks in.
You will suddenly decide you need a boat, or you take an extravagant trip, or you make a highly speculative investment just until your bank account shrinks back down to the level where you feel you actually belong.
And the reverse is true as well. If you fall 10% below your thermostat setting, you engage in scrambling behaviors.
Right, the heater kicks on.
Exactly. You'll suddenly find the energy to work 12-hour days, make 50 cold calls a morning, and hustle relentlessly until you get back into that $50,000 comfort zone.
And then what happens?
Once you hit it, you breathe a sigh of relief and your motivation just evaporates again. The cruel irony here is that the person earning $50,000 and the person earning $150,000 often possess the exact same level of raw talent.
The exact same talent. That's depressing, but also empowering.
It is. Because the only variable is where the internal dial is set.
So it demands that we ask where these thermostat settings originate. Like, who sets the dial in the first place?
Very often, they are inherited without us even realizing it. The text points out a sobering reality. Many individuals unconsciously plateau at the exact income their parents made.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Deep in their psychological programming, they don't believe it is appropriate or even safe for them to out-earn their parents. They hit that invisible generational ceiling, and their subconscious forcefully applies the brakes.
There's an incredible visceral story in the sources that perfectly illustrates the sheer physical power of this mechanism. It's about this young guy who grew up on a poor farm.
Oh, the satellite dish story.
Yes. So he moves to the city and lands a job selling $5,000 satellite dishes to other farmers. Now, the harvest was exceptional that year. The farmers were flush with cash, and they were buying these dishes with both hands.
Just throwing money at him.
Right. So this kid starts making massive commissions. I mean, money faster and larger than his self-concept could ever process. So how does his body physically react to the sudden wealth?
It triggered a massive parasympathetic nervous system response. The success was so fundamentally out of alignment with his identity as a poor farm boy that it was experienced by his brain as a severe trauma.
A trauma. Earning money was a trauma.
Exactly. After closing a few big sales, the cognitive dissonance was so intense that he would drive back to his small apartment, turn off every light, crawl under the covers, and lie in the dark with his heart just pounding out of his chest.
That is terrifying.
He was sweating. He was in a state of sheer panic. The stress of outperforming his self-concept was literally overwhelming his physiology.
This is so crucial to understand. It's really like a video game. If you're a level 5 player who suddenly glitches into a level 50 boss arena, your brain just shuts down and tries to retreat to the safety of the starting zone.
That's a perfect analogy.
Even if you are technically winning the fight, the environment feels intrinsically dangerous.
So the million-dollar question is, if my thermostat is currently set too low, how do I physically turn the dial up? Because just consciously wanting more money clearly isn't enough to override a nervous system that treats success like a threat.
No, willpower isn't enough. To adjust the dial, you have to use a specific mental mechanism. You must achieve your financial goals in your mind long before you attempt to achieve them in external reality.
Okay, so mental rehearsal.
Yes. You have to manually habituate your nervous system to the new normal. If your goal is to earn $100,000, you must first realistically expand your comfort zone by spending time seeing, thinking, and physically feeling yourself as a $100,000 earner.
So it's not just thinking about the number, it's feeling it. Right, you have to mentally practice acting with the calm, relaxed, unbothered attitude of someone for whom that amount of money is completely normal.
But I want to inject a massive warning here because the author himself fell into a trap that I think a lot of people fall into when they read about visualization and manifestation.
Oh, setting the goal too high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When he first learned about this thermostat concept, he was making about $30,000 a year. So he enthusiastically wrote down a goal to make $300,000 a year. What was the mechanism of failure there? Why did his brain short circuit?
Because he attempted to snap his comfort zone instead of stretching it. When you set a goal that is vastly, absurdly beyond anything your nervous system has ever experienced or can rationally believe, your subconscious mind simply rejects it as invalid data.
So it just ignores it.
It doesn't process it as a target, it processes it as a fantasy. Instead of acting as a motivator, it becomes a severe demotivator. His mind completely shut down. Yeah, after 6 months of absolutely zero progress, he realized his error. He reset his goal to a realistic, believable $50,000, which was a stretch, but a manageable one. And almost immediately, his subconscious accepted the new programming, and he began making tangible progress.
Okay, so once you successfully lock in that higher self-concept, it becomes your absolute baseline. The text points out that if a $150,000 a year executive gets laid off, they don't panic and take a $40,000 entry-level job.
No, never.
They immediately start networking and interviewing for another $150,000 job because that is fundamentally who they believe they are.
What?
They will manipulate their external reality to match their internal thermostat.
Exactly.
What powers that thermostat? What is the actual energy source running this master program?
Well, at the very center of your self-concept, the reactor core of the entire psychological machine is your self-esteem. And the author strips away all the complex clinical psychology to define self-esteem in a beautifully pragmatic way. He says it is simply how much you like yourself.
Just how much you like yourself. It sounds almost too simple. Just how much you genuinely, quietly like yourself.
It is simple, but its behavioral ripples are massive. The degree to which you genuinely like yourself dictates your performance and effectiveness in literally every domain of your life.
How does that apply to sales specifically?
Let's look at the specific mechanism for business. The more you like yourself, the more naturally and authentically you like other people. The more you project that you like other people, the more they subconsciously like you in return.
It's reciprocal.
Exactly. And in a commercial context, the more they like you, the more willing they are to buy from you, trust your recommendations, and refer you to their network.
This brings us squarely to the friendship factor. Think about your own buying habits. We live in an era where customers are highly skeptical, heavily guarded, and spoiled for choice with infinite alternatives just a click away.
They can buy from anyone.
Right. And the friendship factor rule states that a prospect will absolutely not buy from you until they are genuinely convinced that you are their friend and that you are acting in their best interest. They have to feel safe.
They really do.
If you don't actually care about their well-being, why on earth should they care about the product you are pushing?
And you cannot fake that care. A person with low self-esteem fundamentally does not like themselves, which means they are operating from a deficit.
Right.
They struggle to genuinely value others because they are entirely consumed by their own insecurities. They have a very hard time building high trust, high quality relationships. And prospects possess a highly tuned radar for inauthenticity. They pick up on that nervous, self-serving energy immediately.
There's an intriguing question posed in the text that beautifully illustrates how self-esteem physically alters reality. When is the absolute best time to make a sale?
Oh, I love this one.
The answer, right after making a sale.
Right after, it seems like a paradox, but it is deeply rooted in neurochemistry. Right after you close a challenging sale, your self-esteem spikes massively. You feel victorious.
You're on top of the world.
Yes. In that specific moment, you like yourself immensely. When you walk into the very next prospect's office, still riding that surge of genuine self-worth, a powerful, subconscious, emotional transference occurs.
So they can feel it.
They literally feel it. Your relaxed body language, your steady tone of voice, your lack of desperation, it physically lowers the prospect's defensive shields. They feel your confident bearing, and it triggers a subconscious desire to align with you.
Every salesperson has experienced this phenomenon. You grind for 2 weeks with 0 results. Then you make one decent sale on a Tuesday morning and suddenly you are completely unstoppable for the rest of the week.
Yes, you just can't miss.
You close 3 more deals that same afternoon. Your product didn't magically get better at noon. The market didn't shift. Your pricing didn't change. The only variable that changed was your internal neurochemistry acting like a giant magnet.
Brian Tracy notes that enthusiasm accounts for 50% or more of all sales ability. A sale is, when you strip away the contracts and the features, it's just a transfer of enthusiasm.
Transfer of enthusiasm. I really like that phrase.
It's so true. When your deep, authentic, emotional commitment to the value of your product transfers directly into the mind of the prospect, their hesitation just evaporates. But here is the critical bottleneck. You cannot give away what you do not possess.
Right. If you don't have it, you can't transfer it.
Exactly. You cannot transfer enthusiasm if you don't genuinely feel it, and you cannot feel it if your baseline self-esteem is depleted.
Okay, I have to push back on the author's prescribed method for fixing this because it triggers my cynicism a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text explicitly tells you to use positive affirmations to build this up. Specifically, repeating the phrase, I like myself. I like myself, over and over again. I'll be honest. Telling a struggling professional to stand in front of a mirror and say, I like myself 50 times a day sounds incredibly cliche.
It sounds a bit silly.
It sounds like an old Stuart Smalley sketch from Saturday Night Live. Like, does repeating a cheesy self-help mantra actually move the needle on a corporate spreadsheet?
It is a completely valid skepticism. It sounds like hollow positive thinking. But let's actually analyze the neurology behind the exercise. The subconscious mind is fundamentally neutral. It is like clay.
No.
It does not possess a filtration system to judge the objective truth or falsehood of the data you feed it. It merely obeys repetitive mental commands.
So it just believes what you tell it.
Essentially, yes. When you forcefully repeat the words, I like myself, over and over with emotional intensity, you are not just making noise, you are actually causing a chemical change in your brain.
A chemical change?
Yes. You trigger the release of endorphins that generate a localized feeling of confidence and well-being. It physically lowers muscular tension while simultaneously increasing authoritative confidence.
Wow, so you are literally overriding your brain's default stress response. You are hacking your own neurochemistry.
Precisely. You are acting as your own physiological cheerleader. Before you walk into a high-stakes, high-pressure meeting, You are deliberately pumping up your self-esteem exactly the way you would manually pump up a flat tire on a bicycle.
Pumping the tires.
Yeah. You repeat, I am an exceptional professional and I am going to dominate this call. Your subconscious accepts that command as an absolute directive. It then organizes your physiological responses to match. It gives you the upright posture, the calm vocal cadence, and the fluid vocabulary consistent with someone who is completely in control.
That's incredible.
You perform better purely because your brain has been chemically optimized for success.
So the practical takeaway for the listener is stop leaving your mental state to chance. Do not let the morning traffic or a rude email dictate your neurochemistry for the day. Pre-program yourself. Pump up the tires before you hit the road.
Every single day.
But here's the reality check. Even with fully pumped tires, even if you are practically vibrating with endorphins, you are still going to hit massive potholes.
Oh, absolutely.
No matter how much you genuinely like yourself, there are two colossal psychological obstacles holding everyone back. The text calls them the twin brakes, the fear of failure and the fear of rejection.
These are the heavy emergency brakes dragging on the engine of your potential. Let's look at the first one, the fear of failure.
Okay.
This is a deep, often subconscious dread, usually rooted in destructive criticism we internalized as young children. If we were criticized continually for making mistakes early in life, we developed an unconscious association between attempting something new and experiencing emotional pain.
So we learn to just avoid trying.
Exactly. As adults, it's rarely the failure itself that paralyzes us. It is the agonizing anticipation of failure that causes us to freeze up and self-sabotage.
And what's fascinating is that it's not just the salesperson sweating bullets over this. The prospect is sitting across the table suffering from the exact same fear.
That is one of the most empathetic insights in the material. The fear of failure in the mind of the prospect is actually the single greatest obstacle to closing a deal.
Wait, really? The prospect's fear?
Think about it from their perspective. Every single customer has made embarrassing or costly buying mistakes in the past. They've bought software that crashed, services that underdelivered, or expensive equipment they didn't really need.
Right, they've been burned before.
They have been burned, and they are terrified of looking foolish again, especially if it's their company's money on the line. The text paints a vivid picture, comparing a hesitant prospect to a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
A long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. I love that.
Right? They are highly sensitized to danger. Your primary job is to systematically lower their fear of making a mistake while simultaneously suppressing your own fear of losing the deal.
But let's be honest. The salesperson's biggest, most debilitating hurdle is the second break, the fear of rejection. It is the visceral dread of hearing the word no, the fear of a stranger being rude, dismissive, or disapproving.
That's awful.
And the harsh mathematical reality of sales is that 80% of your initial calls are going to end in a no, often for 1,000 different logistical reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with your personal worth.
If your self-worth is tied to the immediate approval of strangers, you are going to experience business as a daily psychological torture.
Daily torture.
Literally. Every experience of rejection will puncture your self-image and trigger that deep underlying childhood fear of, I am not good enough. And the behavioral consequences of this specific fear are economically devastating.
This part of the source material completely blew my mind, and I want the listener to really reflect on this. There was a Columbia University study mentioned in the text. They actively track salespeople across various industries to see how much actual work they do.
The results are shocking.
The average salesperson only engages in about 90 minutes of face-to-face revenue-generating activity per day.
90 minutes.
Yeah.
Out of a standard 8-hour workday. The inefficiency is staggering.
Think about your own routine. Be honest with yourself. The average rec rolls into the office around 9 a.m. They spend the first hour getting organized.
Quote unquote organized.
Right. They drink coffee, chat with colleagues about the game last night, check their inbox, shuffle some business cards around, maybe tweak the font on a presentation. They finally make their first real call around 11 a.m.
And then it's already time for lunch.
Exactly. A long lunch. They come back, make maybe 1 or 2 more half-hearted calls in the afternoon, and by 3:30 p.m., they are effectively winding down. They spend the last hour complaining with their coworkers about how tough the current market conditions are.
It's such a common pattern.
Now, the easy, lazy analysis is to say, well, salespeople are just lazy. But the author proves conclusively that it is not laziness at all. It is sheer, paralyzing fear.
He uses a brilliant thought experiment to dismantle the laziness myth. Imagine a high-end marketing firm hands you a localized list of 50 hot prospects.
Okay, 50 hot
Yeah.
prospects.
They guarantee, with 90% statistical accuracy, that these 50 specific people are ready to buy from you today with zero objections. But the catch is, the list self-destructs in exactly 24 hours. What would your day look like?
Laziness wouldn't even enter the equation. I'd be out the door before the sun came up. I wouldn't take a coffee break. I wouldn't eat a long lunch. I wouldn't waste 30 minutes talking about the game. I would work 18 hours straight, sprinting from door to door until I literally collapsed.
Exactly. If you were completely guaranteed a positive outcome, if the fear of rejection was surgically removed from the equation, your so-called laziness would instantly vanish. You would eagerly call on prospects every waking moment.
So the avoidance is just a defense mechanism.
The real reason salespeople avoid getting face-to-face with customers is strictly because the fear of rejection is acting as a subconscious emergency brake. They invent elaborate make-work around the office, updating CRMs, reading industry blogs, reorganizing their desks just to rationalize avoiding the acute emotional pain of a potential no.
Wow.
They will deliberately spread out their appointments geographically so they can spend 45 minutes driving across town pretending they are busy working when they are really just seeking refuge in their car to delay the interaction.
And the financial cost of this avoidance behavior is massive, especially when you look at the statistics on persistence. The text states a hard rule. 80% of significant sales are closed after the 5th attempt or meeting.
80% after 5 meetings.
8 out of 10. Especially if you are trying to convince a client to break an existing relationship and switch from a competitor to you. It takes roughly 5 distinct interactions just to break through their natural skepticism and build enough trust to establish that friendship factor we talked about.
But here's the tragedy of the industry. Only about 10% of salespeople have the psychological resilience to actually make more than 5 calls.
10%.
Half of all salespeople make one single attempt, encounter minor resistance, and permanently give up. But it gets worse. A staggering 48% of sales calls end without the salesperson ever explicitly asking for the order.
48%. They never even ask.
Not even once. They give a dazzling 30-minute presentation, the tension builds, they get terrified of the impending no, and they just awkwardly say, well, what do you think?
Oh, that's painful.
Which is an open invitation for the prospect to use the ultimate escape hatch. Let me think it over.
Let me think it over. It is the most famous, devastating lie in the business world. And the text is wonderfully brutal about this reality.
Yeah.
People do not think it over.
No, they don't.
When you walk out of that conference room, they instantly forget you exist. They're not spending their weekend at home agonizing over your glossy brochure. Let me think it over is just a polite, socially acceptable way of saying goodbye forever.
Which is exactly why top performers condition themselves to demand a clear answer and never, ever give up before the 5th rejection. You have to intellectually separate your identity from the transaction. You must realize that rejection is not personal. When a prospect says no, they are saying no to your specific offering, your current pricing, or the timing of the pitch. They are not rendering a verdict on your value as a human being.
So how do we practically reframe this in the moment? I like to think of it like being a meteorologist, a weather reporter.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you're standing outside and it starts pouring rain, you don't take it personally. You don't think the clouds are angry at you specifically. You don't question your self-worth. You just acknowledge the reality, put up an umbrella, and move on to forecasting the next city.
That is a phenomenal operating metaphor. The top 3% of salespeople treat rejection exactly like the weather. It is just an environmental condition that goes with the territory. It is entirely emotionally neutral.
Emotionally neutral. That's the goal.
They adopt the ultimate bulletproof sales motto. Some will, some won't, so what? Next. When you stop taking yourself so seriously and detach your ego from the outcome, the fear instantly loses its grip.
Because courage isn't not being afraid.
Right. Exactly. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is a habit of action despite it. The more consistently you face the fear, the stronger your courage muscle becomes, until eventually the prospect of rejection renders you virtually unafraid.
And once you finally conquer those twin brakes, you have an engine that can redline, but you still need a steering wheel and a map. That brings us to the final piece of the puzzle: goal setting, mental rehearsal, and the ultimate power of the subconscious mind. We talked about reprogramming the self-concept, fueling the engine with self-esteem, and taking off the emergency brakes. The final step is programming this newly configured machine for precise, real-world execution.
This is where we transition from psychology to strategy. We tap into the relentless goal orientation of elite performers. The highest paid people in any industry are not drifting.
Right, they have a plan.
They know exactly to the dollar what they're going to earn this week, this month, and this year. They have reverse engineered the math. They know exactly how many calls they need to make, how many proposals they need to write to hit those specific numbers. And crucially, this is the non-negotiable step. They write these goals down on paper.
I always hear this advice, but I want to understand the why. Why does the physical act of writing it down matter so much?
Yeah.
Why can't I just keep a really clear mental note of my target?
Because the physical kinesthetic act of writing a goal bypasses the conscious mind and programs the directive directly into your subconscious. Specifically, it activates the reticular activating system in your brain.
The RAS.
Yes, the filter that decides what information gets your attention. Once a clear written goal is locked in there, your subconscious works 24 hours a day, sleeping and waking, to guide your behavior toward it. It begins aggressively alerting you to opportunities you would have otherwise ignored.
Give me an example of how that feels in real time.
Have you ever been in a complex negotiation and suddenly the exact right words just effortlessly fall out of your mouth? Words that perfectly neutralize the other person's unstated concern.
Yeah, you feel like you're in the zone.
That is not luck. That is your subconscious mind pre-programmed with your goal, synthesizing information in the background and feeding you the precise data you need in real time.
It's literally like upgrading your brain's search engine. And I love the contrasting analogies the source material uses to drive this home. First, there's the Columbus salesperson.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
We all know the history,
Yeah.
right? Christopher Columbus left Spain not really knowing where he was going. When he arrived in the Americas, he didn't know where he was. And when he returned to Spain, he couldn't accurately explain where he had been.
He was completely lost.
That is exactly how the average professional operates. They leave their driveway at 8 a.m. with no specific, measurable destination for the day. They arrive at a prospect's office not knowing what specific outcome they are trying to engineer, and they go home at 5 p.m. not knowing why they failed to make any money.
You contrast that aimless wandering with the story of the young, incredibly inexperienced salesman the author highlights. This kid was hired by a competitive company, had absolute zero industry experience, and within 6 short months, he was the #1 salesman in the entire nation, consistently beating out hardened veterans who had been working the territory for 15 years.
And when management finally sat him down in a room to ask for his secret, they were expecting some magical proprietary closing technique, or maybe a sneaky manipulation tactic.
Right, some hidden script.
But his secret was purely mental programming.
His entire edge was built in his car before he ever shook a hand. Every single morning, driving to his territory, he would aggressively repeat his affirmations. I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best.
Pumping the tires again.
Yes. He explicitly affirmed to his nervous system that he was the absolute best in the company, the best in the industry. But he didn't stop at affirmations. Before every single call, he sat in his parked car and meticulously mentally rehearsed the upcoming interaction.
How so? Like, what did he picture?
He vividly visualized himself interacting with the customer exactly as if he were already the top salesperson in the nation. He imagined the prospect's objections. He imagined his own calm responses. He imagined the prospect smiling, agreeing, and enthusiastically signing the order.
Wow.
By the time he actually walked through the glass doors, his brain had already lived the victory. He radiated a warmth and unshakable confidence that created instantaneous rapport.
It is the profound difference between passively hoping for a good outcome and actively engineering one. The text emphasizes a crucial point. Everyone visualizes and talks to themselves all day long.
We can't turn it off.
Right. It's not a mystical practice. It's basic human cognition. The critical difference is what you are choosing to visualize. Mediocre performers are sitting in their cars agonizing over their last brutal rejection, catastrophizing about the rude customer they are about to meet, and vividly imagining everything going wrong.
They are literally practicing failure.
Practicing failure, top performers are doing the exact opposite. They are replaying their greatest hits, accessing the neurochemistry of their past wins, and projecting that victorious state onto the upcoming meeting.
Which is exactly why the author stresses the daily discipline of mental rehearsal. Think about elite sports. Professional athletes, Olympic gymnasts, NBA players, PGA golfers never step onto the field or the court without warming up both physically and mentally.
Never.
They visualize the routine, the shot, the swing thousands of times before the event. A high-stakes business interaction requires the exact same rigorous pre-game routine.
The text actually outlines two highly specific ways to visualize, and I think listeners can use these immediately. First is direct visualization. This is where you see the upcoming interaction through your own eyes. You are looking across the desk at the customer, watching their body language relax, watching them smile, watching their hand move across the paper as they sign the check.
The second technique is indirect visualization. In this method, you mentally step outside of your own body. You watch yourself and the customer interacting from a third-party perspective as if you are a fly on the wall or watching a movie of yourself.
Oh, that's cool. So you're watching yourself succeed.
Yes, you observe yourself being incredibly successful, radiating calm authority, and handling the situation with consummate professionalism.
The profound truth here is that the way you see is the way you will be. By alternating between these two views, experiencing the success from the inside and observing the perfection from the outside, you dramatically accelerate your real-world performance.
Because the brain struggles to differentiate between a vividly imagined event and a real physical experience, by the time you step into the room, your nervous system feels like it has already won.
So if we pull all of these intricate psychological threads together into one overarching synthesis, really the true beating heart of this entire deep dive, it is this inescapable reality. The ultimate battleground of business, of sales, of any entrepreneurial pursuit isn't the open marketplace.
Yeah.
It isn't your fiercest competitor, and it isn't the macroeconomic climate.
No, none of those things.
The ultimate deciding battleground is the 6 inches between your own ears.
It is entirely the inner game, always. Your outer reality is, without fail, a direct, unfiltered reflection of your inner programming.
So if things are bad outside, you have to look inside.
Exactly. If you are struggling financially or professionally on the outside, you cannot fix it by simply changing jobs or buying a new CRM tool. You must adjust the inside. You must ruthlessly master your self-concept and manually upgrade your income thermostat.
And silence the brakes.
Yes. You must silence the crippling fear of failure and rejection by building a reactor core of unshakable, authentic self-esteem. And you must program your subconscious mind with clear written goals and relentless daily mental rehearsal. When you master this inner game, when you finally get out of your own way, the external sales, the wealth, the success, they inevitably, almost automatically follow.
It really does all come back to that invisible thermostat on the wall. You can have the absolute best product in the world backed by the best marketing team, but if your internal thermostat is set to average, your brain will creatively, relentlessly find a way to keep you average. But once you do the work, once you build that ultimate inner engine and actually level up your self-concept, you are finally ready. You're sitting across the table from your dream prospect, radiating all this bulletproof confidence and positive energy.
And that's where the real magic happens.
But once you are actually in that room, looking them in the eye, how do you uncover what they actually want to buy? Next time, we dive into the fascinating, slightly dark psychology of why people buy and discover the invisible emotional triggers that make people eager to hand over their money and say yes. Until then, keep diving deep.
What if I told you that simply moving a pen across a piece of paper today will actually increase your chances of hitting your ultimate income goal by 1,000%?
I mean, 1,000% is a staggering number, but it's real.
Right, 1,000. And we aren't talking about, some new software platform or a revolutionary pitch deck.
No, definitely not.
Not a perfectly optimized social media funnel either. Just ink, like literally just ink.
Yeah, just the physical act of writing.
Exactly. So let me ask you this, and I mean you, the listener. Are you currently shooting at a target in the fog?
That's the perfect way to phrase it, honestly, a target in the fog.
Because if you look closely at the behavior of top-earning professionals, I mean, in any field, the people operating at the absolute pinnacle of their industries, they do not operate in a fog.
Not at all. They have absolute clarity.
Right. They know exactly how much they're going to earn on, any random Tuesday. They can tell you their precise trajectory on a given afternoon in October.
Yeah, they've engineered it.
But then you contrast that with the average earner, and this is wild to me. The average professional literally has to wait until the end of the year, right? Like until their tax forms are physically handed to them just to find out what happened to their own financial life.
It's true. They're just they're waiting for a receipt on their own year.
Exactly. They're living on hope, constantly feeling that awful grinding tension between desperately wanting to be successful and having absolutely no idea how to actually engineer that success.
It is a profound and Honestly, an almost tragic contrast.
Yeah.
And our mission in this deep dive is to completely permanently eliminate that fog for you.
That's the goal today.
We are going to explore the exact proven methodology for setting and achieving targets. And, while the DNA of this methodology is heavily rooted in sales, this matters intensely for anyone in business.
Oh, absolutely. Entrepreneurship, freelance, whatever.
Right? Any performance-driven career. We're talking about transforming your daily grind from this chaotic, unpredictable hustle into a highly predictable science of inputs and outputs.
I love that. The science of inputs.
Yeah, it's about moving from hoping for a result to mathematically guaranteeing it, which, by the way, fundamentally changes how you experience stress.
Well, that is exactly where I want to start, with that guarantee, because the foundation of everything we're looking at today begins with something that sounds almost dangerously simple.
Right, the annual target.
The annual target. But we aren't talking about like a vague New Year's resolution floating around in your head.
Oh, no, those are useless.
They really are. The mechanics of this are incredibly specific. It all comes back to the physical act of writing the goal down.
The physical act of writing your annual income goal down on paper is where the actual mechanics of success initiate.
Yeah.
It cannot just be a fleeting thought while you were stuck in traffic.
Like, oh, I hope I make more money this year.
Exactly. And it cannot be a digital note typed into your phone that you never look at again.
Wait, really? The Notes app doesn't count?
It really doesn't carry the same weight. The research, backed by thousands of case studies across decades of behavioral analysis, shows that the physical act of writing your goal down in ink increases your likelihood of achieving it by 1,000%.
That is just 1,000%.
Yeah, you become 10 times more likely to succeed just by taking the neuromotor action of moving an idea from your brain down your arm and onto a physical piece of paper.
10 times more likely. When you really sit with that number, it's staggering.
It forces you to take it seriously.
And it brings up that target in the fog reality again, because think about it. If you are the finest, most elite marksman in the entire world, right?
Okay.
And you are holding a perfectly calibrated rifle, you still cannot hit a target that you cannot see.
Right. It's a physical impossibility.
Exactly. If you haven't written down a highly specific, concrete number, all of your daily activities, I mean, the hundreds of emails, the endless Zoom calls, the networking meeting.
They're just unfocused shots in the dark.
Yeah. Yes, you aren't building anything. You're just making noise.
And the psychological mechanism behind that is deeply rooted in how our brains filter reality. When you write something down, you force your brain to clarify what it actually wants.
You're stripping away the ambiguity.
Exactly. But there is a very strict parameter for what that number actually should be. You don't just pull a random number out of the ether.
Okay, so what's the formula?
You have to take your highest income year to date, your absolute best performance historically, and you increase it by 25 to 50%.
25 to 50%.
Yeah, that is the sweet spot. It has to be realistic, but challenging.
Now, I have to stop you there and push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because we live in the business culture that constantly screams at us to shoot for the stars, right?
Oh, absolutely, the 10X culture.
Exactly. Every seminar, every guru tells you to 10X your life or go massive. If I'm writing it down and harnessing the psychological focus you're talking about, why in the world would I put a ceiling on it?
It's a fair question.
Shouldn't we be aiming for like a 500% increase to force ourselves to think bigger?
It is a very natural assumption,
Huh.
especially given the hyper-hustle culture we live in right now. But structurally, it's a massive trap.
A trap. How so?
Setting ridiculous, unbelievable goals actually triggers a self-sabotage mechanism. It deeply demotivates you.
Wait, setting a massive goal demotivates you. How does that work mechanically? I feel like it would fire you up.
It comes down to cognitive dissonance and how your subconscious mind regulates your reality.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think of your self-concept as a thermostat. If the room is set to 70 degrees and you suddenly blast it with a space heater trying to get it to 150 degrees, what happens?
The thermostat's internal logic kicks in and turns on the air conditioning.
Exactly. It tries to bring it back to a baseline and recognizes as safe. Your subconscious mind operates the exact same way.
Oh.
It is highly logical, and it bases its logic entirely on your past lived experiences. If you have never made more than, say, $50,000 a year, and suddenly you write down that you're going to make $500,000 this year,
Your brain just rejects it.
right, your conscious mind might feel a brief, intoxicating rush of dopamine. You might feel very excited for about a day. But deep down, your subconscious mind simply rejects the data.
It essentially calls your bluff.
That's exactly it. It calls your bluff. It knows the goal is completely unattainable based on your current skills, your current habits, and your internal self-concept.
So it just shuts down.
Yeah, when your mind fundamentally does not believe the goal is real,
Yeah.
it shuts down the necessary biological drive to pursue it.
Because it thinks you're wasting energy.
Precisely. The very moment you face real adversity, the first lost deal, the first brutal rejection from a client, you will quit.
Because you didn't really believe it anyway.
Right. Your internal narrative will instantly surface and say, see, I was never going to hit that crazy number anyway. It was a joke.
That is fascinating.
So activate your internal drive engine. The goal must be believable enough that your brain treats it as a legitimate directive.
That makes profound sense. It's like walking into a gym and trying to deadlift 500 pounds when you've only ever lifted 50.
You wouldn't even try.
No, you don't even try. You just look at the bar, realize it's physically impossible, and walk to the water fountain.
Exactly.
But if you try to lift 65 pounds, that's a stretch. It's going to hurt. It requires intense focus. But your brain looks at the bar and says, I might actually be able to move this if I recruit every muscle fiber I have.
That is a perfect analogy.
Oh.
The 25 to 50% increase stretches your income thermostat. It pulls you out of your comfort zone just enough to require new behaviors.
Right. Better systems, higher performance.
Yeah, but it stays firmly within the realm of the believable.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting down to do this right now, the mechanics are clear. Decide exactly how much you intend to make in the next 12 months. Calculate a 25 to 50% stretch from your very best historical year and physically write that exact number down today.
So we have the number, and it's neurologically sound. But, a number on a page doesn't magically deposit money into a bank account.
I wish it did, but no.
Right. We have to build a bridge between that piece of paper and tomorrow morning's reality, which leads us to the concept of reverse engineering your success by ruthlessly controlling the inputs.
Yes. This is the pivot from abstract theory to physical execution.
Let's get into it.
In any business endeavor, you are dealing with other human beings. Therefore, you cannot directly control when or where a transaction happens.
You can't force someone to buy.
Exactly. You simply cannot force another human being to sign a legally binding contract or hand over their corporate credit card.
Unless you're doing something highly illegal.
Right, which we do not recommend. So, if you focus your daily mental and emotional energy on the output, the signed deal, the closed sale, you will exist in a state of perpetual anxiety.
Because you are entirely outcome dependent. You're tethering your emotional stability to the whims of strangers.
And the brain absolutely hates uncertainty. It breeds stress.
It really does.
But here is the liberating shift. While you have zero control over the output, you have absolute unyielding 100% control over the activities that lead to the output.
Inputs.
The inputs.
I
You have to take that written annual goal and dismantle it.
How far down do we dismantle it?
All the way down. If you know you need to earn a specific dollar amount for the year, how much total gross revenue or sales volume does that require?
Okay, so you find that big number.
Right. Once you calculate the annual sales volume, you chop it by 12. That gives you your monthly required volume.
Makes sense.
Chop that by 4, you have your weekly volume.
Mm-hmm.
Chop that by 5 working days, and suddenly you have a daily goal.
It completely defangs the monster. You are taking this massive, intimidating, year-long mountain and slicing it down until it is literally just Tuesday's problem.
Yes, but the math doesn't stop at the monetary volume.
Oh, there's more math.
Just a little. Once you have that daily financial target, you have to determine the specific, controllable physical actions required to hit it.
Okay, like what?
You have to know your personal conversion metrics. How many raw phone calls does it take for you to secure one qualified appointment?
Right.
How many appointments do you need to conduct to secure one full presentation? And how many presentations actually result in a closed contract?
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Let's say I do all the math, right? And I realize I need to make 10 prospecting calls a day to hit my numbers. If I just blindly focus on hitting the number 10, isn't there a massive danger that I'm just dialing for dollars?
What do you mean?
Well, if my pitch is terrible, making 10 calls just means I am alienating 10 potential clients at high speed. At what point does the quality of the input matter rather than just the raw quantity?
The quality absolutely matters over the long term. But here is the counterintuitive reality of human performance. Quantity breeds quality.
Really? Just sheer volume.
Yes. If you force yourself to make those 10 calls before noon every single day, without fail, you are going to get feedback. The market will tell you if your pitch is terrible.
And I'll hang up on you.
Exactly. And by sheer repetition, you will refine your tone, you will learn to overcome objections, and your quality will naturally skyrocket.
So you fix it in motion.
Exactly. But if you obsess over quality first, you will succumb to analysis paralysis.
Oh, I've seen people do this.
They spend 4 hours researching one prospect. They make one perfectly crafted call, get sent a voicemail, and their entire day is ruined.
So you're saying the volume is almost a protective mechanism.
It is a mathematical safety net based on the law of large numbers.
Right.
The law of averages is an inexorable, undeniable force in business. If you know your historical ratios, even if your ratios are currently poor, and you simply execute the raw inputs, the outputs are a mathematical guarantee over time.
It's just probability at that point.
Exactly. By shifting your entire professional focus to the inputs, saying to yourself, my only job today is to execute 10 calls and 2 meetings, you completely eliminate the emotional roller coaster.
That is profound. You are no longer waking up in a cold sweat, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you are going to succeed today.
No, the if is gone.
You are just waking up knowing you have 10 calls to make before you are allowed to eat lunch. It completely removes the existential dread from the profession. You are essentially just punching the clock on your own custom-built assembly line.
It creates an impenetrable psychological armor. You stop judging your self-worth by whether people told you yes or no.
Because that's not the goal anymore.
Right. You start judging your professionalism purely by whether you executed your activity metrics. Did I do the work? Yes. Then the day was a success.
And the sales will inevitably follow the math.
They have to. So to operationalize this, you have to track your personal conversion metrics for a month.
So if you don't know them, you just start tracking today.
Exactly. Find out exactly how many daily activities equal a closed deal for you specifically. Once you have that ratio, you obsess over nothing but hitting that daily activity metric.
So we have the target locked in ink, and we have the math breaking it down to daily action.
Right.
But humans are not spreadsheets, right? We are biological machines. And this brings us to a really fascinating threshold, because setting these goals isn't just about time management.
Not at all.
It actually changes the neurological structure of how you perceive reality. It codes what we can call the subconscious supercomputer.
This is where we move from basic productivity into the realm of cognitive science.
Which I love.
It's fascinating. The vast majority of our cognitive processing power lies beneath the surface, in the subconscious mind. The conscious mind, the part of you listening to this sentence right now, can only process a minuscule fraction of the data hitting your senses at any given moment.
It's like the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. When you write down clear, highly specific goals, and you break them into daily, actionable inputs, you are essentially writing code for that subconscious supercomputer.
You're programming yourself.
Right. And once that code is uploaded, your subconscious mind works 24 hours a day, while you are sleeping and while you are awake, scanning the environment to guide you toward that specific target.
Okay, I want to unpack the mechanics of this, because I think everyone listening has experienced this without realizing what it actually was.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever been in a high-stakes meeting where you just felt completely dialed in?
Yeah, that flow state.
Right, a state of absolute flow. You're
Yeah.
sitting across from a prospect, and you effortlessly pick up on a tiny physical cue. Maybe they shift their weight, or, their eyes dart to a specific line on a document.
You notice the micro movement.
Yeah. And without even consciously deciding to, you bring up a totally unplanned point.
Right.
You mention your company's implementation timeline, and the client's eyes light up, and it turns out that was the exact specific bottleneck they were worried about, and you just solved it before they even asked.
Most successful professionals have experienced that exact scenario. And what is fascinating is how we retroactively explain it.
We usually just say, we got lucky.
Right. We attribute it to luck, or having a good day, or just intuition. But neurologically, it is not magic. It is your perfectly programmed subconscious mind operating at peak capacity.
So how exactly does that work? What is the brain actually doing in that moment?
It is utilizing a network of neurons at the base of the brainstem called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS.
At any given second, your senses are bombarded with millions of bits of information, visual, auditory, physical. If your conscious brain tried to process all of it, you would literally go insane.
Just overwhelmed by static.
Exactly. So the RAS acts as a bouncer at a nightclub. It filters out 99.9% of the sensory data and only lets in what it deems strictly relevant to your survival or to your stated goals.
The classic example of this is the cocktail party effect, right?
Yes, that's the perfect example.
Like you're in a crowded, noisy room. You can't even hear the person standing next to you, but someone 20 feet away says your name in a normal volume, and your brain instantly snaps to attention.
Exactly. Because your name is permanently programmed into your RAS
Yeah.
as highly relevant data.
It bypasses the noise.
It does. Now, apply this to a business context. When your subconscious has a clear written directive of what you are trying to achieve, that 25% increase, that specific daily metric, it programs your RAS to be hyper alert to any opportunity in your environment that will fulfill that goal.
So it's actively hunting for the sale.
Yes. In that flow state meeting you mentioned, your conscious mind wasn't fast enough to register the client's microexpression.
I was just trying to remember my pitch.
Right. But your subconscious mind, driven by the goal, processed the subtle shift in their posture, cross-referenced it with thousands of past interactions, and fed your conscious mind the exact right words to say, all in a fraction of a second.
It's the exact same reason why when you decide to buy a specific model of a car, suddenly you see that exact car everywhere on the highway.
Yes. The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
The cars didn't magically appear. They were always there. Your brain just started caring about them.
Right.
When you program your brain with specific written targets, it suddenly sees the path to the sale everywhere. Opportunities that were completely invisible to you last week become painfully obvious today.
Right. And this is a big point. Here's the critical maintenance required for this system. The RAS needs constant reinforcement.
You can't just set it and forget it.
No. You cannot write your goals on January 1st, stick the paper in a drawer, and expect your subconscious to prioritize it in October.
Life gets in the way.
Exactly. Other immediate stresses will overwrite the code. You have to review your written goals continuously, ideally daily or at least weekly. You have to keep the code fresh so your subconscious mind remains perpetually hyper-focused on finding the fastest path to achieve them.
So the supercomputer is coded, the math is laid out, we have the target.
Right.
But a supercomputer still needs a power source, right? It
Yeah.
needs electricity. And in human terms, that power source is what you do when the environment inevitably pushes back.
Because it will push back.
Always. Rejection is real, the economy fluctuates, deals fall through. How do we survive the friction of the real world?
You survive it by building a disproportionate level of emotional resilience. In our methodology, this is about building a roaring fire under your desire.
Let's talk about the biological reality of rejection for a second, because I think people brush over this.
They do. They act like it's just a mindset thing.
Right, but when a client hangs up on you or laughs at your proposal, it doesn't just feel bad emotionally, it actually hurts.
It literally hurts. Functional MRI scans show that social rejection triggers the exact same regions of the brain, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex, that process physical pain.
Wait, actual physical pain?
Yes. When a prospect says no, your brain literally registers it as a physical injury. Evolutionary biology wired us this way because, thousands of years ago, being rejected by the tribe meant starvation.
So we are biologically hardwired to avoid rejection at all costs.
At all costs.
Which makes a career in sales or entrepreneurship fundamentally opposed to our biological defaults.
And it really does.
We are choosing to walk into a buzzsaw of physical pain every single day. So if my only reasons for pushing through that pain are, I want to pay rent and I want to take a vacation to Florida, my brain is going to do the math.
Math won't favor the cold calls.
Exactly. It's going to say, the physical pain of this rejection is worse than the pleasure of a vacation. Shut it down. Stop calling people.
That is the exact internal dialogue of the average earner. Their motivation is too shallow to override the biological friction of the marketplace.
It's just not enough leverage.
Right. They have one or two weak reasons driving them, which we can think of as a couple of twigs in a furnace.
Yeah.
When a giant bucket of ice water, representing a brutal client rejection, hits those twigs, the fire goes out instantly.
And they just quit.
They are left cold, unmotivated, and looking for a new job.
But if you build an algorithmic feedback loop that overrides that pain, if you have a massive, deeply personal list of reasons why you absolutely must succeed, that furnace becomes a roaring, unstoppable inferno.
Yes.
A bucket of cold water doesn't put out an inferno. The water vaporizes on contact and actually creates steam that powers the engine further.
I love that visual. And the mechanism to build this inferno is a very specific exercise. It's called the 100 Goals Notebook.
100 goals? That sounds like a lot.
It is a lot. You get a dedicated spiral notebook, and you write down every single thing you want to be, everything you want to have, and everything you want to do. You do not filter it for practicality. You write down everything from paying off your mother's mortgage to funding a specific charity to buying a particular watch to the exact type of leader you want to become.
But wait, let me challenge this.
Sure.
Isn't sitting down and listing 100 things you want just an exercise in, like greedy material hoarding? Is that really the deepest form of human motivation?
If you stop at 10, yes.
Okay.
Writing 10 goals is easy. It's usually a car, a house, a boat, and a watch. It's superficial. But try writing 100.
It gets harder.
It gets incredibly hard. By the time you are struggling to come up with goal number 67 or number 84, you have exhausted all the material superficiality.
You run out of toys to buy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're forced to dig into the profound. You start writing down the legacy you want to leave your children. You start writing down the specific systemic problems in the world you want to use your wealth to solve.
So it forces depth.
Yes. You are expanding your psychological capacity. You are building emotional armor.
You are literally giving your brain 100 distinct reasons why it is not allowed to quit today.
Exactly. There's a documented case study of a young professional who started out completely inexperienced, with absolutely no natural talent for his industry.
Okay.
But he took this exercise to an absolute extreme. He bought a notebook and eventually listed over 350 individual goals.
350? That's insane.
It is. Every time he read a magazine or drove through a wealthy neighborhood or saw a societal problem he wanted to fix, he added it to the book. And he relentlessly reviewed this massive list every single week.
350 distinct reasons driving his behavior.
And the results defied logic. From a dead start in a highly saturated, intensely competitive market, he became one of the most successful individuals in his entire field.
Just from the notebook.
He shattered existing records. And when analysts looked at his performance, he didn't credit a secret closing technique or a proprietary software tool. He explicitly stated that his massive, overwhelming motivation made him feel unstoppable.
He had that much leverage on himself.
Exactly. He had so much internal leverage that the fear of rejection simply ceased to exist.
It's the ultimate neurological override. So the directive here is clear. Get a physical notebook today. Not tomorrow, not on the weekend. Today.
Yes. Immediately.
And begin the grueling, revealing process of listing at least 100 personal, familial, material, and legacy goals that your success will actually fund.
Which brings us to the final critical bridge.
Let's do it.
We have the macro target, we have the daily input math, we have the subconscious RAS coded, and we have an inferno of desire driving us.
I'm ready to go.
But none of that matters if you walk into the actual client boardroom and freeze. How do we bridge the gap between this massive internal motivation and the external high-stakes pressure of a live meeting?
This is where a lot of highly motivated people fall apart. The preparation is perfect, but the execution is a disaster.
Because they fall into a behavioral trap. Let me use a historical metaphor to frame this. When Christopher Columbus set sail from Spain, he didn't actually know where he was going. When he finally arrived in the Americas, he didn't know where he was. And when he eventually returned to Europe, he didn't really know where he had been.
He was just confidently winging it.
Precisely. And that is exactly how an alarming number of professionals walk into crucial meetings.
They just wander in.
They mistake enthusiasm for preparation. They wander into a prospect's office just like Columbus. They haven't prepared mentally. They just walk in, sit down, open their laptop, and start saying whatever happens to fall out of their mouths in that moment.
Hoping for the best.
They hope their natural charm will save them. And when they leave the meeting, they have absolutely no idea why the prospect bought or why the prospect rejected them. It's pure chaos.
Okay, so if we contrast that with elite performers, the people who are actually executing on the math and the goals, what are they doing differently in these, say, 60 seconds before they open the boardroom door?
Top performers treat a high-stakes business meeting the exact same way Olympic athletes treat a championship event.
They warm up.
Exactly. You would never see an Olympic sprinter just walk onto the track, finish a sandwich, shrug, and wait for the starting gun.
No, they'd pull a hamstring.
Right. They have a rigorous pre-performance routine. They are warming up, they are stretching, and most importantly, they are engaging in intense, structured mental rehearsal. Elite professionals do the exact same thing. They practice mental rehearsal before every single call.
Now, when we say mental rehearsal or visualization, I feel like a lot of people's eyes just glaze over.
I know, it sounds a bit out there.
It sounds like a bumper sticker. It sounds like, the secret, just close your eyes, imagine $1 million, and it will magically appear in your driveway. How is this different from just delusion?
It is entirely different because it is rooted in how the nervous system actually prepares for physical action. This isn't about magically manifesting a result. It is about priming your physiology.
Priming the body.
Exactly. The subconscious mind, as brilliant as it is terrible at distinguishing between a vividly imagined event and a real physical event.
Wait, really? The brain can't tell the difference.
Not at the neurochemical level, no. When you intensely visualize performing a physical action, the exact same motor pathways in your brain light up as if you were actually doing it.
That is wild.
This is why athletes visualize their routines. It actually thickens the myelin sheath around the neural pathways involved in the movement.
So they're literally practicing without moving.
Exactly. In a business context, if you sit in your car dreading a meeting, dwelling on the last sales call you had that went terribly wrong, what is your brain doing?
It's prepping for another failure.
Right. Your subconscious mind says, okay, this is the environment we are entering, a threat. It projects that negative past experience onto the upcoming call. It will flood your system with cortisol, restrict your breathing, orchestrate defensive body language, and cause your voice to waver.
So you will literally orchestrate your own failure because your brain is preparing for an attack.
Yes, by passively worrying, you are actively giving your brain a biological blueprint to fail. You are preloading the failure.
That is terrifying, honestly.
It is. But consciously visualizing success interrupts that biological pattern. There is a documented example of a very young, inexperienced professional who became the top performer in his entire nation within just 6 months.
6 months.
Yes, he was outperforming veterans who'd been in the industry for a decade. His secret was an aggressive pre-meeting ritual.
What do you do?
Before every single meeting, he would sit alone in his car, and he would vigorously affirm to himself out loud, "I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best."
Just pumping himself up, altering his state.
Altering his state precisely to lower cortisol and spike dopamine. But then he would close his eyes and vividly visualize the upcoming meeting.
Yeah, okay.
He would picture the customer's face. He would see them smiling, nodding in agreement to his points. He would vividly imagine the physical act of the customer pulling out their pen and signing the contract.
By doing that, he is feeding the subconscious a new blueprint.
Yep.
He is telling his nervous system, we are walking into a safe, victorious environment. So when he physically walks into the room, his shoulders are back. His breathing is deep and regulated.
He radiates a calm, professional confidence.
And the client instantly, subconsciously detects that and responds to it.
It alters the micro-expressions on your face. It drops the pitch of your voice. It completely transforms the interaction.
Because you aren't in fight or flight mode anymore.
Right, so the immediate application for this is non-negotiable. Before you walk into your next meeting, or before you click join on your next high-stakes Zoom call, stop.
Do not rush in.
Do not rush in. Take 60 seconds of absolute silence. Vividly visualize the client responding enthusiastically to your exact proposal. See the positive outcome, and firmly state to yourself that you are the absolute best in your field.
You are pre-paving the neurological pathways for your own success.
It takes less than a minute, but it entirely rewrites the biological reality of the interaction.
Okay, we have covered an immense landscape of psychology, mathematics, and biology today. Let's try to synthesize all of this.
Sure.
If there is one overarching singular insight to pull from this entire exploration, it is the realization that success leaves tracks. Elite performance is not an accident.
It is the soul of this entire methodology. The absolute pinnacle of performance in entrepreneurship or business is not about being born with a naturally magnetic personality.
Thank goodness.
Right. It is not about being lucky or being in the right place at the right time or having a silver tongue. Those are the excuses average earners use to justify their own stagnation.
True elite performance is a highly engineered, mathematically predictable formula.
Yes.
It requires deep, unshakable internal clarity. You know, having your 100 reasons why burning like a furnace to override the biological pain of rejection.
And constantly using your subconscious RAS to filter the world for opportunities.
Exactly. And it requires perfectly aligned external execution, taking a massive annual stretch goal, writing it down in permanent ink, and ruthlessly reverse engineering it down into daily, non-negotiable input metrics.
It is the perfect marriage of the internal and the external.
Inner game and outer game.
Right. When your inner game, your psychological resilience and subconscious programming matches your outer game, your mathematical inputs and conversion metrics, you completely transcend the chaotic hustle.
You escape the fog entirely.
You move from the anxiety of hoping for success to the absolute peace of manufacturing it. You become unstoppable.
Unstoppable. That is the perfect word for it. So now that your targets are physically locked in ink, your daily activity math is mapped out on a spreadsheet, your emotional furnace is burning, and your nervous system is primed for absolute success.
You're ready.
What actually happens when you open your mouth? What is the actual mechanism that makes the person sitting across the table finally decide to pull out their wallet and say yes?
That's the next big question.
In our next deep dive, we are going to explore the hidden psychological triggers of human behavior. And we're going to uncover the shocking evolutionary reason why a client's fear of loss is actually 2.5 times more powerful than their desire for gain. You will not want to miss it.
So think about the last major purchase you made. I mean, a really substantial one.
Right.
Like maybe it was a car or a new house or, a high-end laptop. Or even some massive piece of software for your business.
Yeah, something that really made you think before swiping the card.
Exactly. Now, I want you to be brutally honest with yourself for a second. Did you really buy the physical object?
I love this question.
Right. Because did you actually hand over your hard-earned money just for the metal or the glass or the code? Or did you actually buy a better version of yourself?
It's really the ultimate question of commerce. Because when you strip away all the marketing jargon and the spec sheets, nobody buys products.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody buys services either. What they buy is the emotional improvement that those things promise to bring into their lives.
And that is exactly the core premise we are unpacking today. We've got a massive stack of sources on the table for this deep dive.
We really do.
Articles, research papers, and my own notes heavily focused on the foundational psychology of why people open their wallets. We're drawing a lot from Brian Tracy's extensive work on buyer behavior here.
Right. His chapter on why people buy is just legendary.
It's foundational. So our mission today is to extract the absolute most important insights from this material. For anyone listening who's interested in business, entrepreneurship, or just understanding the bizarre machinery of human nature.
Which is fascinating all on its own.
Totally. Mastering these concepts is the ultimate shortcut. It's the difference between pushing features nobody cares about and offering solutions that people are just desperately eager to buy.
Yeah, it's that shift from being a vendor, just pushing a commodity, to being a trusted advisor who facilitates a transformation.
Right.
And once you understand these underlying psychological mechanics, you stop feeling like you're trying to convince anyone of anything.
Because it stops being a fight.
Exactly. Instead, you learn how to align what you offer with the deep pre-existing desires of the person sitting right across from you.
I hear that. But I want to push back right out of the gate here.
Let's do it.
Because the overarching theme in our notes is that people buy emotional improvement, which implies that all purchases are fundamentally emotional.
They are.
But let me play devil's advocate. What about the highly analytical buyer? You know the archetype I'm talking about.
Oh, the spreadsheet guy.
Yes. The corporate procurement manager, or the structural engineer, or that IT director who walks into a vendor meeting armed with return on investment projections and a ruthless checklist of technical specs.
Right, they look completely emotionless.
Exactly. Are we seriously arguing that a person evaluating server latency is making an emotional decision?
We absolutely are. And if we look at the evolutionary biology and the cognitive science behind decision-making, it actually makes perfect sense.
Really? Even the IT director?
Even him. Every single buying decision, without exception, is 100% emotional.
Wow.
That emotion is merely justified by logic after the fact.
So you're saying the spreadsheet is essentially what, just a prop? Like a rationalization?
Well, not a prop, but a tool for defense. Look at the mechanics of the human brain. Thinking, which is that analytical, logical processing happening in our prefrontal cortex, takes a tremendous amount of time.
And energy, right.
Yes, caloric energy. It requires a really heavy cognitive load. But emotions originate in the older, deeper parts of the brain.
Like the amygdala.
Exactly, the amygdala. Emotions are instantaneous. They're basically evolutionary shortcuts designed to keep us alive and keep us moving forward.
Okay, so the emotion hits first no matter what.
Always. Even your most analytical buyer, that IT director with the spreadsheet, makes an instantaneous emotional decision first.
But what is the emotion there? It's just a server.
The emotion is the desire for a specific result. They desire the security of not getting hacked. Or they desire the status of looking hyper-competent to their CEO.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Or honestly, they just desire the relief of solving a frustrating issue so they can finally go home to their family at 5 o'clock instead of working through the weekend.
Right. So the drive to solve the problem is emotional, but the evaluation of the solution is logical.
Bingo. They need the data to prove to themselves that their emotional impulse was the correct one.
And approve it to their boss, I assume.
Yes, and more importantly, defend it to others. If that IT director buys $1 million software system because he, quote unquote, had a good feeling about the vendor,
He gets fired immediately.
he is out the door. He needs the technical specifications to logically justify his desire for security to the board of directors, but the drive to make the choice at all is pure emotion.
That is fascinating. But that actually brings up a really dark side of this emotional spectrum that our sources highlight.
You mean the fear aspect?
Yeah. We tend to think of buying as a pursuit of happiness, like buying a new car to feel joy. But the research indicates that the desire for a positive result is actually completely dwarfed by negative emotions.
It's completely overshadowed.
There is this specific psychological principle we need to look at from the text. The fear of loss is 2.5 times more powerful than the desire for gain.
It is the defining asymmetry of human behavior, and it's rooted super deeply in our survival instincts.
So how does that 2.5 times multiplier actually work?
Well, think about it from the perspective of an early human hunter-gatherer. If you miss out on an opportunity to gain something, say, you miss picking a bush of ripe berries, you might be hungry for a night.
Unpleasant, but not a disaster.
Right. But if you miss out on avoiding a loss, say, you fail to notice a predator hiding in the tall grass, you are dead.
Game over.
Exactly. So our neurology evolved to prioritize threats way over opportunities. We are hardwired to be terrified of losing what we already have.
So how does that translate to someone walking into a modern-day car dealership or, a software pitch?
Modern customers are terrified. I mean, they aren't running from creditors, but they are terrified of making a mistake.
Because they've been burned before.
We all have. They're terrified of being ripped off, of getting stuck in some multi-year contract for something they can't even use. And perhaps most acutely, they're terrified of looking foolish.
Oh, the social embarrassment factor.
It's massive. They don't want to look stupid to their peers or their spouse. Every customer you will ever meet carries the scars of a past purchase gone wrong.
Like they bought that shiny appliance that broke a month later.
Or they hired the contractor who just abandoned the kitchen remodel halfway through. And because this fear of loss has a negative motivational power of 2.5 compared to a positive motivational power of just 1 for the desire for gain.
You're just fighting a massive psychological headwind right from the start.
From the very moment you say hello.
I used to visualize this like a vintage balancing scale, where you just pile the benefits on one side and the cost on the other.
That's how most people think of it.
But knowing this psychology, it's more like trying to sell someone a luxury cruise while the ship is literally on fire.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Like, it does not matter how incredible the all-you-can-eat buffet is, which is the desire for gain. Their brain is entirely hijacked by the smoke and the flames, which is the fear of loss.
They aren't even looking at the buffet.
No. You can't just hand them a menu and expect them to buy a ticket. You have to put out the fire first.
You really do. You have to actively de-risk the purchase. You can't just pile on benefits and hope those benefits somehow, logically outshine the absolute terror of making a mistake.
So how do you put out the fire?
You have to dismantle the fear systematically. And a classic illustration of how to do this comes from the marketing strategist Jay Abraham.
Oh yeah, he's brilliant.
He championed this concept called the better than money back guarantee.
Okay, I am familiar with standard guarantees. But how does a better than guarantee actually function in the real world?
It functions by completely neutralizing the perception of risk. I mean, in a standard guarantee, the customer returns the product and gets their money back.
They break even.
Right, they break even. But in a better than money back guarantee, the vendor says, hey, if you aren't completely satisfied with this training program, not only will I give you a full immediate refund,
but you get to keep the bonuses.
Exactly. You get to keep all the bonus materials, the software templates, and the private community access I gave you just for trying it out.
So the customer actually ends up mathematically and practically ahead, even if they return the main product and ask for their money back.
Precisely. Now think about what that does to the fear of loss in the buyer's brain.
It completely obliterates it.
It reverses the polarity of the fear. Suddenly, the only way they experience a loss is if they don't take the offer, because they are guaranteed to walk away with something of immense value either way.
That is wild. But, I can hear a lot of listeners right now thinking, well, I sell custom architecture, or I sell complex IT consulting. I can't offer a money-back guarantee where they keep the house if they don't like it.
And that is a totally fair point. The literal application of that specific guarantee isn't feasible for every single industry, but the underlying principle is absolutely mandatory for everyone.
Which is shifting the risk.
Yes, the burden of risk must be shifted from the buyer to the seller.
So for you listening, this means you really need to audit your sales pitch, your website, your proposals today. Are you spending 90% of your time just selling the upside?
Are you just talking about the buffet while the ship is on fire?
Exactly. If so, you are ignoring the biggest psychological barrier in the room. You must dedicate massive energy to reducing the customer's fear of making a mistake.
And if you can't offer a refund, you do this through overwhelming social proof. Case studies, long-term warranties, trial periods.
Just building bulletproof credibility.
You have to make saying yes to you feel safer than maintaining the status quo.
But once you achieve that, once you extinguish the fire and the buyer finally feels safe, you face the next major hurdle. Because feeling safe is not the same thing as feeling the desire to purchase.
Not at all.
Like a rock sitting in a garden is perfectly safe, but it isn't going anywhere.
That's right. If we have successfully neutralized the negative emotion of fear, we still have to actively trigger the positive emotions required to get them to actually reach for their wallet.
Right. We need to know what they actually care about, what gets them moving.
And what they care about is governed by a universal principle that our sources refer to as WIIFM.
WIIFM, which stands for What's in it for me.
What's in it for me? Every single customer, regardless of their industry, their cultural background, or their budget, is tuned to this one specific psychological radio station.
You know, it sounds incredibly cynical when you say it out loud like that. Are we really that selfish as a species?
Well, it isn't really about malice or selfishness. It's about biological economy. Human attention is a incredibly scarce resource.
We can't care about everything.
Exactly. So our brains filter the world based on what is relevant to our own survival and thriving. Every action a human takes is aimed at an improvement of their own condition.
So what's the mistake people make when they're selling?
The fundamental mistake amateur salespeople and product developers make is that they obsess over what their product is.
Oh, like they just list features.
Yes. They obsess over the raw materials, the proprietary algorithm, the years of research and development, the complexity of their supply chain.
It's the classic founder's trap.
Yeah.
They are completely in love with their own creation.
Because they spent years building it. They have a massive emotional attachment to the sweat equity they put into the product. But the harsh reality is that the customer absolutely does not care what your product is.
Or how hard it was to make.
Nope. Or how clever the engineering is. They only care about what your product does for them.
Does it save them time?
Does it make them money? Does it make them look attractive?
This reminds me of one of my favorite analogies from our research notes. The pipeline and the bucket.
Oh, it's such a perfect visual.
It really is. So picture a massive, complex pipeline spanning miles across a desert. That pipeline represents your product. It is your delivery system, your company history, your patented technology, your logistics network. It is literally everything you do.
The whole operation.
Right. But at the very end of that long pipeline, a small stream of water is dropping into a wooden bucket. The water in that bucket represents the actual tangible improvement the customer experiences in their daily life.
And the tragedy of most business communication is that companies spend their entire marketing budget and their entire sales presentation talking about the pipes.
Look at the gauge of the steel we used.
Exactly. They show the customer PowerPoint slides about the reinforced valves and the incredible engineering tolerances. Meanwhile, the customer is just staring at their empty bucket.
They're completely tuning out the engineering lecture, just wondering if they're ever going to get a drink of water.
It's so true.
Let me ground this in a real-world scenario. Think about a top-tier life insurance agent. Life insurance is, by definition, a wildly complex financial instrument. It involves actuarial tables, premium structures, term limits, dividends, compound interest calculations.
It is a massive, intricate pipeline.
Right. But the absolute best life insurance agents do not walk into a prospect's living room and pitch the policy features. They do not talk about the pipes.
No, they put the client to sleep.
Instead, they sit down, look the prospect in the eye, and ask a question like, do you feel responsible for providing for your family if something unexpected were to happen to you?
Now that is a masterclass in bypassing the analytical brain.
Because it doesn't invite a debate about interest rates.
Not at all. It goes straight to the emotional core of the individual's identity as a provider.
And if the prospect says no, the agent politely packs up and leaves because the underlying emotional need simply isn't there. But if they say yes, the agent is no longer selling a 50-page legal contract.
So what are they actually selling?
They are selling the bucket.
Yeah.
They are selling peace of mind. They are selling the mental image of the prospect's spouse not having to sell the family home and their kids still being able to afford a college education even if the absolute worst happens.
They are selling the relief from future guilt. And this is the practical challenge for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Have you clearly, ruthlessly defined what drops into your customer's bucket?
How do they actually figure that out?
Well, the exercise you need to do is to physically map out your product's pipeline. Just write down all the features, all the specs, all the technical details that you are so proud of.
Get it all on paper.
Yeah. And then intentionally push all of that paper to the side. Stop talking about the pipes. Force yourself to paint a vivid emotional picture of the water filling the customer's bucket.
Ask yourself, how is their life going to be tangibly easier, richer, more secure, or more joyful because they interacted with your business?
Exactly.
But, if we're supposed to be filling this bucket, we do run into a bit of a definition problem here.
How do you mean?
Well, what exactly is that water made of? Like, improvement is a highly subjective, broad term. One person's improvement is another person's clutter. So what are the specific foundational human desires we are actually trying to satisfy?
That's a great point. While surface desires change, the foundational architecture of human psychology is actually highly predictable. We have specific, hardwired emotional needs that drive virtually all discretionary spending.
And the research we are drawing from outlines several key human needs.
It does. It starts at the bottom with basic survival and financial security, but it scales all the way up to profound psychological needs.
But there are a few that really stand out.
Yeah, when it comes to overcoming extreme price resistance, there are a few core needs that are vastly more powerful than the others, specifically status, recognition, and personal transformation.
Let's talk about status, because it's such a fascinating driver. It's where human behavior becomes incredibly transparent.
It really is.
Let's look at the classic example of a wristwatch. You can go to a department store right now and buy a perfectly functional digital quartz watch for, say, $50. It will tell time with absolute atomic precision. It does not lose a single second. It has an alarm, a stopwatch, a backlight. Functionally, as a tool for tracking the rotation of the Earth, it is flawless.
It does the job perfectly.
That is pure logical utility. Now, compare that to a luxury mechanical watch, like a Rolex or a Patek Philippe, which might cost $15,000 or even $50,000.
Right.
Does the Rolex tell time 300 times better than the digital watch?
As any watch enthusiast knows, the answer is no. A mechanical watch is actually far less accurate than a cheap quartz watch.
Really?
Oh yeah, it requires expensive maintenance, it literally stops if you don't wear it, and it's heavier. If we evaluate this purely logically, purchasing the Rolex is a terrible decision.
So what is that extra $14,950 actually paying for?
Well, it certainly isn't paying for punctuality.
No.
It is paying for the feeling you get when you walk into a boardroom, slide your cuff back, and have the person across the table notice the timepiece.
Oh, absolutely. Any dollar spent over that initial $50 is no longer purchasing a timepiece. It is purchasing jewelry.
And specifically, signaling jewelry.
Signaling jewelry. That satisfies a deep evolutionary need for status, prestige, and recognition within a social hierarchy.
Yes. The buyer is paying to signal to the world, and honestly, just as importantly, to signal to their own internal ego that they are highly successful, that they have ascended the dominance hierarchy.
That they have arrived.
Exactly. The need to feel important and praiseworthy is so profound that when a product effectively satisfies it, rational price resistance almost completely vanishes.
It's the concept of conspicuous consumption. But the sources mention another core need that goes even deeper than status.
Transformation.
Yes, what they call personal transformation. And the anecdote they use to illustrate this is incredible.
The golf story.
Yes. So there's this account of a manufacturing executive, a vice president, who makes a fantastic salary. And outside of work, this guy is absolutely obsessed with golf.
He's a fanatic.
He plays multiple times a week, takes expensive vacations just to play famous courses, buys all the new titanium clubs, and he makes this stunning statement to a colleague.
What did he say?
He said he would gladly hand over $50,000 in cash to any golf professional who could permanently shave just 2 strokes off his handicap.
$50,000.
For 2 less swings of a golf club over a 4-hour period.
I mean, Think about the pure mathematical absurdity of that proposition. If you evaluate that logically, it borders on insanity.
Right.
But you cannot evaluate it logically because he isn't buying an hour of coaching on the driving range. He isn't buying a subtle adjustment to his grip.
So what is he actually buying?
He is buying a transformed version of his own identity. He is buying the version of himself who consistently breaks a score of 80.
Oh, wow.
He's buying the version of himself who wins the annual club championship, who gets his name engraved on the brass plaque in the clubhouse, who experiences the deep, visceral admiration of his peers on the 18th green.
He is buying the transition from good golfer to elite golfer.
Identity is the ultimate luxury product.
It really is. And the vital lesson here is about commoditization.
How so?
Well, when you sell a basic service, like when you sell an hour of your time or a standard software license, you are a commodity. You are competing in a race to the bottom on price because the buyer can always find someone slightly cheaper.
Right, there's always someone who will do it for less.
But when you sell a verifiable transformation, the rules of economics completely change. There is virtually no ceiling on what people will pay to become a better version of themselves.
So the practical application for you listening is to look at your current offering and figure out how to elevate it.
How to get it out of the commodity zone.
Exactly. If you're a fitness trainer, you aren't selling a workout plan. You are selling the transformation of a client being able to play on the floor with their grandchildren without back pain.
Ask yourself, how can I position this not just as a utilitarian tool, but as a vehicle for status, for profound recognition, or for a permanent identity shift in my client's life?
It is a super powerful reframe, but I know exactly what the skeptics in the audience are thinking right now.
I'm thinking it too. Let me speak with the skeptics for a minute.
Go for it.
Sure, that all makes perfect sense for a Rolex, or a country club golf swing, or a luxury vacation. Those things naturally appeal to human ego and vanity. But what if I sell something incredibly boring to a massive, faceless corporation?
Right, the B2B problem.
Yeah, what if I'm in B2B sales? What if my product is enterprise accounting software, or industrial lubricants, or fleet logistics management? Where's the emotion in a supply chain?
Where's the prestige in an oil change for a forklift?
Exactly. Where's the personal transformation when you were pitching a procurement committee?
This is perhaps the greatest and most expensive misconception in the business world. It is the ultimate B2B trap.
Really?
Yes. The fallacy is believing that businesses buy things. Let me be very clear about this. Businesses do not buy things.
Wait, what?
Buildings do not buy things. LLCs and corporate charters do not buy things.
Oh, I see where you're going. The people inside those buildings buy things.
Exactly. Biological, emotional human beings buy things. And the procurement officer or the department head sitting across the conference table from you is driven by the exact same evolutionary biology.
The exact same emotional needs.
Yes. The desire for status, the craving for security, the paralyzing fear of loss. It's the exact same as the executive buying the Rolex.
That makes so much sense.
The secret to B2B selling is understanding the absolute necessity of aligning what we call the business win with the buyer's personal win.
Okay, we need to define those terms clearly. What is the distinction between the business win and the personal win? Because to the outsider, they honestly sound like the same thing. If the business wins, the employee wins, right?
Not necessarily. In fact, they are often in direct conflict.
Really?
Well, the business win is what the abstract corporate entity cares about. A corporation only cares about one thing at a macro level: net profits. It wants to cut operational cost, increase market share, improve efficiency. That is the return on investment, the ROI that the board of directors cares about.
Okay, so what does the human being across the desk care about?
They care about the company's ROI, sure, but mostly because it impacts their personal reality. They are internally asking themselves, how will championing this software make me look to my boss?
Will this get me promoted?
Exactly. Will implementing this new logistics system require me to work 80-hour weeks for the next 6 months? Will this prevent me from getting fired if the economy turns?
Could successfully deploying this project be the specific win that gets me that corner office and a larger year-end bonus?
Yes. So it's the WIIFM principle, what's in it for me? Just wearing a tailored suit and sitting in a corporate boardroom.
That is profound. And there's a brilliant historical case study from the research that proves this.
The Betty Dean story.
Yes. So there is a story about a sales professional named Betty Dean who sold early office automation systems. Think dictation machines, early word processors, things designed to make secretarial work faster.
Right, the early tech days.
and she was struggling immensely to hit her quotas. Her initial approach was to call up businesses, ask for a general manager, and say, "I'd like to schedule a time to show you how our products can increase your company's overall efficiency and improve the smoothness of your administration."
Which sounds incredibly vague.
To a busy manager, increasing efficiency often just sounds like implementing a disruptive new system that I have to waste time training people on. It sounds like a massive headache.
It was a headache. She was pitching the abstract business win, and she was getting rejected constantly. People said they were too busy, they didn't have the budget, or their current system was just fine.
So what did she change?
Well, realizing this abstract approach wasn't working, she drastically changed her angle. She stopped asking for general managers altogether.
Who did she ask for?
She started asking to speak specifically to the person directly in charge of the administration budget. And when she got them on the phone, her new script was incredibly targeted. She said, "I have a specific process that can save you 20 to 30% of your office administration costs. It takes exactly 10 minutes for me to show it to you. You can decide for yourself if it's what you're looking for."
That is a masterstroke.
Let's dissect why that worked so well.
Okay, first, she lowered the fear of loss by capping the time commitment to 10 minutes.
Yes,
And she explicitly gave them an out by saying, "You can decide for yourself."
which removes all the pressure.
But more importantly, she tied her product directly to the metric that this specific administrator is paid to care about.
She targeted the personal win.
By hitting their specific KPIs, their key performance indicators, the exact metrics their boss uses to evaluate their performance, her sales just skyrocketed.
She doubled and then tripled her income because she stopped selling abstract corporate efficiency and started selling a solution that would make that specific administrator look like an absolute genius to their superiors.
Demonstrably cutting costs by 30% makes you look like a hero.
So the takeaway here for our B2B listeners is that the next time you are preparing a slide deck for a pitch, you need to stop obsessing over the company's annual report.
Nobody cares about the annual report in that meeting.
Right. You need to start obsessing over the human being sitting across the table. You need to ask yourself, how does this specific person get paid? How are they evaluated at their annual performance review? What metrics keep them awake at night?
Because if your new enterprise software saves the corporation $1 million a year,
But the installation process creates a massive 6-month headache for the IT director who has to deploy it.
that IT director will actively sabotage your sale. You have to sell the IT director on how your software ultimately makes their life easier and elevates their personal status within the company. That is a crucial insight. You have to align the corporate ROI with the personal KPI.
But this naturally leads to a secondary problem.
What's that?
The danger of information overload. Because once you start looking for all the ways your product helps people, you might map out 10 or 20 different valid benefits.
Right, you might find ways it helps the CEO, the IT director, the end user, the accounting department.
Exactly. But if you walk into a meeting and attempt to pitch all 20 of those benefits at once, you will almost certainly kill the sale.
I see this happen all the time. The salesperson sounds desperate. They're just machine gunning features at the prospect, hoping that anything resonates.
It creates a massive cognitive load for the buyer.
So how do we narrow it down? How do we know which specific benefit we are actually supposed to focus on?
This is where we apply the 80-20 rule, often known as the Pareto principle, to buyer psychology.
Okay, in economics, the Pareto principle states that 80% of consequences come from 20% of the causes.
Right. And applied to sales, the rule dictates that 80% of a prospect's buying decision will hang on just 20% or sometimes even as little as 10% of the product's total benefits.
Wow.
This vital, concentrated core of desire is what the research calls the customer's hot button.
The hot button. It is the single overriding reason they're willing to part with their money.
Exactly. Imagine your product has 10 distinct, objectively great features. If you spend your hour-long meeting giving equal time to all 10, you are spending 80% of your time talking about things that are at the very bottom of the buyer's priority list.
You are creating noise.
You're diluting your own value proposition. And worse, you might bring up a feature they actively dislike, creating friction where there was absolutely none.
So you must isolate their primary emotional desire, their hot button, and focus the vast majority of your presentation demonstrating how you solve that single solitary problem.
There is a story in our notes that illustrates this phenomenon perfectly.
Oh, the flower and cherry tree story.
Yes. Let's paint the picture. Imagine a real estate agent showing a married couple a house. Now, objectively, this house is a bit of a disaster.
The exterior paint is peeling badly. The plumbing in the guest bathroom is questionable.
The roof might need replacing in a few years, and the husband is walking around the perimeter looking at the cracked foundation, just shaking his head. Logically, it's a terrible investment.
But then the wife walks through the back door into the yard. She looks past the peeling paint, and in the center of the lawn, she sees this absolutely magnificent, fully blooming, ancient cherry tree.
And it reminds her of her childhood home.
She falls completely, instantaneously, and emotionally in love with it.
And this is the critical moment. What does the masterful real estate agent do when he recognizes this emotional shift?
He does not try to rationalize the plumbing. He doesn't pull out a spreadsheet detailing the square footage price. He immediately pivots the entire tour. He walks the couple upstairs to the master bedroom, points out the window, and simply says, "Notice that from the master bedroom, you have this beautiful, unobstructed view of the flowering cherry tree to wake up to every morning."
And they end up buying the house.
Despite the plumbing, despite the foundation.
Because the cherry tree was the hot button. It was the 20% of the property that drove 80% of the emotional desire.
The plumbing and the paint were simply logical details that they would figure out how to justify and fix later, because the emotional need for that tree had eclipsed everything else.
So for you listening, here is a highly practical, immediate takeaway. Every single product, every single service on earth has a flowering cherry tree.
It is a core emotional hook.
Right. And to find yours, you are going to do some incredibly fast, cheap market research this week. I challenge you to call 10 of your past customers.
People who have already bought from you and are happy with your work.
Yes. And you are going to ask them one deceptively simple question. Thinking back to when we started working together, what was the primary reason you decided to buy from us rather than one of our competitors?
And the revelation you will have when you conduct this exercise is often astounding.
The data shows that roughly 80% of those customers will give you the exact same answer.
Wow.
And very often, it will be something you didn't even realize was your primary selling point.
Like, you might think you sell the most advanced software, but they might tell you, "We chose you because your customer service team actually answers the phone on the first ring, and we felt supported."
Exactly. Your cherry tree is your reliability, not your code. Whatever that recurring answer is, write it down. That is your hot button.
From that day forward, make it the absolute center of gravity for all your marketing and future pitches.
Okay, that is a brilliant strategy for utilizing past customers, but I want to explore the edge cases here. Let's get highly tactical about brand new prospects.
Okay, let's say I am sitting in a conference room or on a Zoom call with a prospect I met 5 minutes ago.
You have no past data on them.
Right. I can't just guess their hot button. I don't know if they are looking for a cherry tree or a renovated kitchen or a shorter commute. And I can't just shine a desk lamp in their face and interrogate them about their deepest insecurities.
That would kill the vibe pretty quickly.
So how do I actually extract this highly sensitive emotional information from a stranger without alienating them?
That requires mastering the art of needs analysis, and it fundamentally requires a complete paradigm shift in how you view your role in the room.
How so?
You have to stop acting like a salesperson trying to pitch a product and start acting like a diagnostician or a consultant trying to solve a puzzle. And the golden rule of consulting, and truly of all effective persuasion, is this: the person who asks the questions controls the conversation.
Telling is not selling. Only questioning is selling. I feel like we need to unpack that phrase. Telling is not selling. Because the stereotypical image of a great salesperson is a fast-talking extrovert who can pitch a refrigerator to an Eskimo.
That stereotype is exactly why so many people fail at sales, and why buyers have their guard up constantly. When you are pitching, presenting, or lecturing, you are simply presenting a target for the buyer to shoot down.
You are guessing at what they want.
Right. But when you are asking deeply considered questions, you are gathering the precise intelligence required to actually help them. But the power of questioning goes far beyond just gathering data.
There is a profound psychological and physiological effect that occurs when a person is genuinely listened to, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what actually happens in the brain and body when someone feels truly heard?
The physiological response is remarkable. When you give a person your undivided, intense attention, when you maintain eye contact, lean in, and actively listen without interrupting their physiological state changes.
Really? Like how?
Their heart rate actually goes up slightly. Their blood pressure rises.
Wait, hold on. If their blood pressure is rising, doesn't that mean they're getting stressed out or anxious? That sounds like a negative reaction.
It's not the spike of stress or cortisol. It is the physiological arousal of feeling deeply important.
Oh, wow.
It is the thrill of validation. We are social creatures who desperately crave being understood. When you listen intently to someone, you are implicitly communicating that they are valuable, that their problems matter, and that their opinions are respected.
That triggers a release of dopamine, doesn't it?
Yes. As their self-esteem rises in your presence, their subconscious defense mechanisms lower, and their trust in you rises proportionately. You uncover their hot button, not by interrogating them, but by acting as an empathetic sounding board and utilizing the specific mechanics of active listening.
Let's break down the specific mechanics, because the sources detail a few actionable keys to effective listening that anyone can use today.
The first, and arguably the most difficult for ambitious professionals, is pausing before replying.
This is so hard.
When the prospect finishes speaking, you must discipline yourself to wait 3 to 5 seconds before you utter a single word.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. 3 to 5 seconds of dead silence in a high-stakes corporate meeting. I feel like I would look insane.
It does sound counterintuitive.
The client finishes a sentence, and I just stare at them for 5 seconds. Once they think my brain froze or that I wasn't paying attention, the natural instinct is to immediately jump in and say, yes, absolutely, and our platform can solve that immediately.
The instinct to jump in is driven by your own anxiety, your own need to prove your competence. But let's look at how to execute the pause naturally. You don't just stare at them blankly. You nod slowly. Perhaps you look down at your notepad and jot a quick note. You display the physical posture of someone deeply contemplating what was just said.
Oh, okay.
It feels like an eternity to you, but to the speaker, it communicates profound respect. It proves you're actually digesting their words, not just reloading your own mental ammunition waiting for your turn to speak.
Okay, I can see how the body language makes it work.
And here is the true magic of the pause. Human beings generally abhor a vacuum in conversation. Silence feels socially awkward.
It really does.
If you wait 3 or 4 seconds, very often, the prospect cannot handle the silence. They will start talking again.
That's fascinating.
And it is almost always in that unprompted continuation that they reveal the actual truth, the deeper motivation that they were holding back in their initial rehearsed answer.
I have actually accidentally done this in interviews. You ask a question, they give the PR-approved corporate answer, you just wait a beat too long, and suddenly they sigh and say,
But the real reason we're looking to change vendors is because my boss is breathing down my neck about the Q3 numbers, and I'm terrified of missing quota.
boom.
The corporate veil drops, and there's the personal hot button handed to you on a silver platter simply because you had the discipline to shut up.
Precisely. You let the silence do the heavy lifting.
What's the next mechanic?
The next mechanical key is questioning for clarification. Never assume you understand what the prospect means, because words have vastly different definitions to different people.
That is so true.
The research offers what might be the ultimate all-purpose golden question of persuasion. It's simply, how do you mean?
How do you mean? It's so short. Why is that specific phrasing so effective?
It is elegant in its neutrality. It doesn't sound defensive, and it doesn't sound aggressive. Imagine a prospect leans back, crosses their arms, and says, your product costs way too much.
Oof. The amateur salesperson panics right there.
They immediately start defending the price. They start arguing about value, or worse, they immediately offer a discount, destroying their own margins.
Right.
But the professional simply pauses, looks at them calmly, and asks, how do you mean?
And what does the prospect do? They can't just repeat, it costs too much.
Exactly. They are finished to elaborate and provide context. They might say, well, we only have $10,000 left in our departmental budget for this quarter.
Aha. Now you know it is a cash flow timing issue, not a value issue.
Right. You can easily solve that by offering deferred financing or splitting the billing across 2 quarters. Or they might answer, well, your main competitor just pitched us a similar system for 20% less.
Aha. Now you know exactly who you are competing against.
And you can confidently pivot to discussing why your superior implementation support justifies the premium price. Asking, how do you mean? Forces the prospect to literally talk themselves into revealing the exact logistical roadblocks you need to remove to close the sale.
That is incredibly tactical. And it leads to the final piece of the listening puzzle, which the material calls the acid test of listening.
paraphrasing.
Right. Once the prospect has poured their heart out, explained their problems, and revealed their hot button, you do not immediately start pitching.
First, you summarize their entire situation back to them in your own words. You say, so if I am understanding you correctly, your primary frustration isn't just the software itself, but the unexpected downtime it causes your team during the end-of-month reporting, which is stressing you out. Is that accurate?
And when you can perfectly articulate their problem, often with more clarity than they initially use themselves, a fascinating psychological leap happens in their mind.
What's that?
They subconsciously assume that if you understand their problem that perfectly, you must automatically possess the perfect solution.
It builds an indestructible bridge of trust.
It really does. So the challenge for our listeners in their next professional interaction is to radically shift their ratio of talking to listening.
Treat your next sales meeting not as a presentation, but as an exploratory medical diagnosis.
Prepare a list of deep, open-ended questions. Treat silence as your most powerful investigative tool. Force yourself to count to 3 in your head before you reply to anything.
And whenever you hit a wall of resistance or a vague objection, just gently ask, how do you mean? Let the customer paint the detailed picture of their own bucket for you.
This brings us to a place where we can really synthesize everything we've covered today.
It's been a journey.
If we pull all these disparate psychological threads together, the evolutionary fear of loss that paralyzes buyers, the WIIFM principle, the deep emotional needs for status and identity transformation, the necessity of aligning the B2B corporate win with the personal win, finding the cherry tree, and the profound physiological power of listening. What is the grand unified theory here?
What's the bottom line?
It seems to me that it means true selling, true influence, is fundamentally an act of deep empathy. It is absolutely not manipulation. It is not trickery or coercion.
That is the most vital distinction we can make. Manipulation is a zero-sum game.
Right.
Manipulation is attempting to use psychological pressure to force someone to buy a product they do not want, do not need, and will ultimately regret.
Which is terrible for long-term business anyway.
It's toxic. True selling, as outlined by these principles, is an act of service. It is understanding that everyone you meet, everywhere in the world, is walking around burdened by a profound, often unspoken desire for emotional improvement.
And a deep-seated, exhausting fear of loss.
When you truly internalize that reality, you stop pushing products, you stop acting like a vendor, you start offering bridges.
I love that visualization. You are offering bridges. You use your questions to hold up a mirror to the customer's deepest needs.
Whether that need is the profound security of providing for their family's future,
The ego validation of sliding a luxury watch out from under a cuff.
The career survival of a stressed-out office administrator.
Or simply the daily joy of looking out a window at a beautiful flowering cherry tree. You do the hard work of discovering what they desperately want.
and you show them, logically, safely, and empathetically, how your solution is the sturdy bridge that carries them from their current frustration to that better version of themselves they are trying to reach.
And when you successfully build that bridge, the traditional metrics of business change.
Price resistance melts away.
Because you are no longer a line item on a spreadsheet.
Competition becomes irrelevant because competitors are just selling pipes while you are providing water.
You aren't selling a commodity anymore. You are facilitating a transformed life.
This has been an absolutely incredible, multi-layered deep dive into the hidden psychology of why people buy.
We have unpacked a massive amount of ground from the behavioral sciences, evolutionary biology, and practical sales strategies. I hope you are walking away with a completely new lens through which to view your customers and actionable tools you can use in your very next conversation.
Just remember to pause for 3 seconds.
Yes, embrace the silence. But as we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with a forward-looking thought to mull over as you digest all of this. Now that you understand the fundamental mechanics of exactly why people buy, the next grand challenge emerges. How do you stand out in a sea of identical competitors who might be reading these exact same books and learning these exact same psychological triggers?
Because everyone is going to be looking for the cherry tree.
Exactly. If everyone knows how to find the hot button, how do you make your specific bridge the most attractive, memorable one in the market?
That requires the art of creative differentiation and radical positioning.
Which is a fascinating puzzle you can begin to explore on your own as you start applying today's concepts to make your offer truly unforgettable.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
Take these tools, go find some cherry trees, and start building those bridges.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.